Alright, YouTube, it's been a while since I've been up posting, been very, very busy. Did a live stream response to the first presidential debate last night, and I'm going to sit down here and we're going to go through a whole bunch of Chud responses. Now, a little different here, you're not going to see your feed spam with the new one like, oh, Sargon has some stupid take on the debates, here's this response video, or Recording has a stupid response, here's this response video, or here's Tim Pool's response in response to that stuff. I'm not going to do that. It's all going to be in this one long video, so it's going to be fairly long. But if you want to catch a specific Chud take video and my response to it, look down in the description below. You'll see the timestamps. Click on the timestamps. That'll bring you to the start of those videos, right? So you can watch which ones you want to watch instead of trying to fumble way through, what's likely to be a several-hour-long video. All that said, we're going to start it off hot. We're going hot with Carl Benjamin. Let's see what he has to say. Title of the video, Biden lost the first debate. Ew. Doesn't look that way. So let's see what he thinks it is.
Well, that was fun, wasn't it? I mean, at least if one thing you can take away from the first debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden is that Trump is not low energy at all, is he? Like, he was really going for it for the whole time. And you could see he was getting more frustrated the more the moderator and Joe Biden essentially refused to engage with what I felt were a lot of legitimate points that Trump brought up. And it's really interesting how...
Let's see what legitimate points he thinks Trump brought up. This is going to be fun.
Chris Wallace kind of was like taking the bullet for Trump and for Biden and diving in the way of some really uncomfortable questions that I don't think that Biden has ever had to answer in public before. And I think we really deserve answers to. Like, Trump repeatedly brought up the malfeasance, the nepotism that seems to have been surrounding Hunter Biden. Now, of course, because it's Trump, he could have phrased these better, but Hunter Biden just openly admitted that he wouldn't have been on the board of the Ukrainian gas company if it wasn't for his surname of Biden. And Joe Biden admitted that, yes, he had...
So, I mean, that is a uncontroversial statement there, Carl, right? Like, do you think this is kind of what happens with people, and doesn't have to necessarily be any kind of nepotism on the part of Biden getting the job or anything like that? It's like, oh, hey, my dad's the vice president here, right? So that's going to confer you a lot of benefits. Just like if we go in like the private business world, right, and go see Trump's children or whatever. Yeah, well, yeah, beyond the nepotism in there, so it's kind of bad to look at and try to for someone like Trump to go after Biden for supposed nepotism. But the point I'm making is that in the business world or in the private world and stuff, Trump's children have a leg up just because they're Trump's children, right? Just for that name. That's completely uncontroversial, and it's just kind of how things work, to kind of treat that as like, oh, he's admitting to nepotism. It's like, that's not what's being admitted to there, right? That's just, hey, I got the last name of the president. Or, if you go, you have you have like the last name of Kennedy or something there, you're going to get selected and looked at differently, just for that, right? And this happens too. We recognize this in like even our smaller local communities. If you have a certain name, you're going to be treated differently by different people, different organizations, stuff there, just by having that name, right? And it may confer, in a lot of cases, a leg up over other people.
Had a drug problem, which appears to be the reason that he got kicked out of the Navy. And when Trump brought these up, Biden would just say, no, these are lies, these are lies, these are lies. Oh, and sorry. And the alleged $3.5 million that Hunter Biden received from the wife of the mayor of Moscow, weirdly enough. And he didn't bring up the fact that Biden had used economic leverage on Ukraine to force them to fire a prosecutor. But it doesn't matter. There was a lot there that really does seem to be just a perfect example of the reason that the sort of neoliberal internationalist wing of the Democratic Party and their sort of counterparts in the Republican Party are just really sort of deep boomer corruption that you...
All right, Biden is not a neoliberal. Let's stop that there. All right, that's wrong, right? It's never been the case. So Biden, there was a good analysis on Biden's past history that 538 put out. And he's basically at the center of wherever the Democratic Party is at any given time. So he's more a staunch Democrat kind of first ideology thing than any specific ideology beyond that. So, which is one of the benefits towards us with the move of the Democratic Party to the left, right? The increases of the progressive wing of the party and stuff like that. Like the Progressive Caucus is the largest it's ever been in its 30-year history, right? So progressives have a lot of sway, and so that brings the center of the Democratic Party closer to them. And with that, that's kind of where Biden's going to land no matter what. Now, does that mean when in the 80s and stuff, when after the issues that we faced in the 70s, the stagflation, all that other stuff, and kind of the favoring of neoliberalism on the new right, that the third wave movement that kind of appeared amongst the Democrats in the 80s shifted the Democratic Party more to the right, and Biden would have fallen, more to the right than where he is today. Yeah, and that's kind of how it is. But even in that, the third wave movement isn't neoliberal, right? They take some aspects of neoliberalism, right? But they still hold on to several other neoclassical views, their Keynesianist views and stuff like that. So they didn't give it all up. They just took the things that seemed to be working, right? Seemed to look good, seemed to work and run well. Now, many on the left at the time would have liked them to gone, full socialist, right? I mean, no, that's just not true, right? The center of the party has moved left since Obama, right? It's pretty much on par with the UK Labour Party, right? There was a New York Times article that came out where they, just based on manifestos, rated it here. And so amongst the world, the Democratic Party's manifesto is center-left, clearly center-left, and pretty close to the UK Labour Party kind of thing there. Now, if you're in the UK, you may not think the UK Labour Party's center-left or whatever, but that's not a talking point that's used by leftists here in America or progressives in America to shit on the Democrats.
He wants to try and avoid. And this was something they couldn't get Trump on because Trump hadn't got this long history of doing this. And so Trump had a really strong point. And for some reason, Chris Wallace just wouldn't let Trump demand the answer from Biden. And I think this is something Biden really has to answer for. When Biden accuses Trump of, shutting down the country to benefit millionaires and billionaires like him, it's like, Joe, you're a millionaire too. So is your son. Your family are millionaires because you appear to have leveraged your connections in foreign countries to enrich yourselves. Nancy Pelosi's a millionaire. You're all millionaires. Don't bullshit us, man. Don't pretend like Trump's the only wealthy guy stood on this stage, fellow Scrantonites. Yeah, come on. Come on. I mean, who do you think you're fucking kidding? I'm not even American. I'm looking at this thinking, yeah, right, Joe. I can't even.
So this is kind of funny. This is so in the video, this should be in the beginning, this should be his first salvo into why he believes that. Yeah, but you have to look at what's available to there, right? So for voting stuff, for voting measures and stuff in the U.S., the Democrats have so important in like the U.S. context. So if you really want to get your party manifesto through, you have to have both houses of Congress and the presidency, and typically you have to have a supermajority to get past the filibuster, right? If you're not willing to get rid of the filibuster. Now, I'm all in favor of getting rid of the filibuster, right? I think that's a silly thing to get in the way. It's a nice obstructionist tool there and stuff, but majority, you get a majority on the legislation, pass it through. And given how the system in the U.S. is set up, it is very, very, very difficult for Democrats to get that supermajority, right? Especially in the Senate. It's just the way the Senate is set up. It's nearly impossible to get that many votes. Now, we got it under Obama, and unfortunately, Obama came in at a time when, the third way Democratic movement was still big in the Democratic Party, was still holding some force, right? So even having that 60-vote supermajority, you have the conservative, the far more conservative Democrats like Lieberman and was Manchin in at the time? I can't remember, but those are the ones that would hold up and get in the way. So just looking at voting patterns like that isn't there, right? So, and it's funny to look at just voting patterns too, especially applying stuff to presidents, right? So I've seen leftists online say Nixon was to the left of Joe Biden, and that's just not true. And a big reason a lot of the policies that they want to the policy gains and stuff under Nixon is that if I remember correctly, the Democrats held veto-proof majorities. So if Nixon would veto something, they could pass it through. Either way. So really, what was pushing what they think was more left stuff was the Democratic Party had that power that Nixon didn't have. And a lot of people are like, well, Reagan really isn't as bad as what Reagan, even though Reagan is kind of the foundation and the basis for why Trump and stuff exists. Reagan wasn't so bad. It was for the first few years of his presidency and stuff, there was Democratic control of both the House and the Senate, right? So there were a moderating factor in what Reagan actually wanted to do in a lot of stuff. Now they still caved in on some stuff there, and that's largely because of the shifting climate and stuff there. It's really complicated, and if people really want to look just strictly at politicians and stuff and history and all that other stuff, and they want to ignore the analysis around what the situation was at the time, we know this. If you're a liberal in the U.S. and all that stuff, this. Over time, it's been less bad to be called a liberal or even a socialist. Now we've seen that coming in 2016, but for most of us growing up through the 90s, 2000s and stuff, it was still, being a liberal was not a good thing to be, largely in people's mind. And that was something that was true in the late 70s into the 80s and stuff, when there was that change and the rise of the new right that Reagan eventually coalesced all these different factions around and together that gave us the modern Republican Party, which leaves out a lot of the solid Republican politician stuff that we had previously, right? Like there was the Rockefeller wing of the Republican Party, which we would have looked at today would have been pretty moderate Democrat kind of stuff, right? But they were rear wing, and largely they were that way is because unions in the Northeast were very, very powerful at the time, and so the Republicans had to appeal to the unions to get elected in those northeastern states. Now unions outside of the police union and stuff don't support the Republicans. I mean, you're not going to find a union that's going to support a party that is straightforward right to work, which is union busting stuff, right? So there's a lot of factors, there's a lot of variables going in here, and some of the simple labels and simple analysis a lot of people do, and in comparisons from presidents to the past to presidents to today and different government policy, right?
Even imagine how much Americans must be rolling their eyes at you at this point. It's genuinely, what are you doing? And the charge that Trump puts against saying, look, I did more in 47 weeks than you did in 47 years. Well, that actually seems to be quite strong at this point. Trump has got a long list of successes under his belt. He's been nominated for 3 Nobel Peace Prizes.
All those Nobel Peace Prizes are nominated by far-right politicians and other governments, Carl, right? Let's not leave that out, right? So that's not quite a, if we want to use the participation trophy attack, not quite that, but because I don't think participation trophies are bad at all. They serve a good purpose in youth baseball and beyond baseball and stuff. But that's my experience here and the importance of there. But it would be something like conservatives hate participation trophies, and that's essentially what it is some far right politicians we like Trump's far right very fascist view of the world, and we're going to support that, so he gets a Nobel Peace Prize, right? And Carl's going to hold that up as something good, and anybody that looks into it, it's like, it's not what you say it is, Carl. It's not like this is some this isn't some it'd be one thing if a leftist center or even a moderate centrist kind of person was nominating Trump, and it's not the case, right? It's the far right that are in line with Trump, that think Trump's a good thing and want to normalize Trump's policies and stuff and Trump's behavior in government. But no, Trump hasn't gotten more done than anything Biden's done in 47 years. I mean, 47 years, Biden's pretty prolific legislator and stuff. Part of that's being that he's right around the center of the Democratic consensus. So what the Democratic consensus gets done largely is going to be part of what Biden gets done, right? Whether you think those policies are good or bad is, irrelevant, because obviously a lot of the stuff that Carl thinks is good that Trump gets done, a lot of that is really bad policy. And it's not a lot of things. Like, most of Trump's promises have failed. Like, from that first campaign, failed miserably to get any of them done, right?
He seems to actually be doing things that are actually making the world a better place. And Joe Biden claiming that Trump had tanked the economy is such a weird claim, because, like, Joe, everyone lives in the economy, don't you? Everyone all over the place can see how economies are doing, because they can just see it in their own lives. They personally, how much money they have is affected by the economy, Joe. So, like, saying that Trump, we know that statistically, Trump did have lowest unemployment rates in, I think it was just ever, wasn't it? It's like since the 30s or something. Really, really low for a very long time. Lowest in the black community apparently ever recorded, things like this. And this all seems to be a logical consequence of Trump's history as a businessman and his rhetoric about improving the economy, making sure the Americans aren't getting screwed on trade deals, etc., etc. So it's not like this is something...
So this is Carl being stupid, has no fucking clue about any of this stuff, right? So that low unemployment rate and stuff is true, right? It's lowest it's ever been, stuff there. But it was a part of one of the longest growth periods in the economy ever, in the U.S. economy. Was it 138 straight months of continual growth? Dating back largely to the Obama-Biden administration, right? So it was largely what Trump was sitting on was given to him by the Biden administration, Biden and Obama administration, or the Obama-Biden administration, flip it around. And so Biden brought that up. Biden talked about that's the point. Carl's never going to recognize this or anything. So they go, oh, this is so much better, and it's because Trump did it. It's like, no, it's not. It continued here. A lot of the Trump policies that tanked the economy, and that's true. That's what happened with COVID. COVID just revealed what we were already expecting. Economists going into 2020, right? And I cover this a lot on Snarky's channel on what's happening, right? And we're talking about all this negative economic impact coming, the inverse yield curve, stuff like that was predicting a recession. So going into 2020, economists were predicting a 50-50 chance of a recession in 2020. And an even higher one, I forget what it was, by 2021, given the current data. And a lot of that has to happen with Trump's tax cuts, right? So what happens when these big tax cuts that the Republicans do is you get a bubble. You get a quick spending bubble that's here that gets inflated, and then it pops, and then you hit recession, right? It's pretty pretty just go-to, right, each time they do this, right? So, from Reagan onwards and stuff, these kind of tax policies that get here, so there's a quick influx of money that inflates a bubble, and then it pops, right? And so we were expecting this. Economists were expecting it. So what put the nail in the coffin and guaranteed that we're going to have it was the COVID pandemic, which Trump failed miserably at, right? But yeah, we were heading for recession. The economy was not doing well. The underlying indicators were not looking good. So it was going to go into recession, largely because of what Trump did.
You can try and take away from him by just simply saying it. Trump destroyed the economy. No, he didn't. The coronavirus destroyed the economy. Trump didn't want to shut down. He doesn't want to shut down now. He's the advocate of opening up right now. You're the advocate of keeping everything closed. And then later on, Joe Biden then goes on to say, well, we need to give businesses the help they need to get back on their feet. It's like, how about you let them trade? That would be the first thing, would it not?
So, no, like, the opening up, so, like, I don't know if you guys follow World Meter US data stuff that tracks coronavirus stuff, and so they have their projections. So if we stayed relatively locked down, they were still projecting about 400,000 people dead by January 1st, right? Opening up now, they're projecting over 600,000, 700,000 people dead, right? And the things that they want to do, right? We're going to get hit hard this winter when all the flu and respiratory diseases are, coming in at their peaks and stuff. You don't think with the COVID running around and those things, being more damaging here isn't going to just decimate us going into the winter. I mean, we're in for a really rough winter. There's gonna that 210,000 thereabouts that we have. That's likely going to double, if not more so, especially with the push by the Republicans to open everything back up. It's going to be a mess. And now, one of the things, and they're giving businesses and stuff to help. These are the stimulus packages, right? Like, we have to shut down to do to something to mitigate this and get this under control. Now, had Trump put in policies like good contact tracing and all that other stuff back when we did the shutdown earlier in the year, maybe we're sitting in a pretty good spot like a lot of other countries that did, right? Instead of looking at what seems to be coming as a strong second wave, and it's not looking good based on the numbers that are coming in. And Trump's just going to make it worse by opening everything back up and, loosening all these restrictions.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're the one saying, right, you're going to have to get screwed here because otherwise people will die, and people will die because of all of the shutdowns anyway, but that doesn't matter because apparently COVID deaths feel more controllable and they can be used for political gain, I would suggest. But anyway, the whole thing was remarkable because Trump...
Controllable in what way? Like, is that we can... Like, again, we have not done what's necessary in this country to get the full opening up that we've seen in a lot of other places, right? That have gotten into there because our contact tracing has largely been trash. I mean, certain states that are doing well with it have good contact tracing. So, like, I live in Minnesota. Contact tracing has been pretty good here. I remember, God, this must have been 2 months ago or whatever, that there was a report that among new COVID cases, the people that were getting COVID the most were the younger demographic. And, obviously shitheels like Tim Pool will come out and say, oh, the riots are doing it, the protesting and all this other stuff. And it's like, you go and look at their contact tracing and it says, nope, this increase has all come from like bar activity and all this other stuff here. And so, like, in the same report where that said, hey, what is it, 40% of new COVID cases are by people under 30. And they were in that case, and we weren't getting very many cases in general, like, per week and all that other stuff. We were like 500, 600, 700, something like that at most, in Minnesota at the time. And they tracked, I think it was well over 100, maybe 150 cases to 2 single bars in a city that is outside the metro area, and then they also were dealing with in some rural counties a large COVID infection surrounding meat packing facilities and stuff, and doing that with our industrial meat and stuff there, that they were having big issues with it, right? And so, and then at the same time, you were looking at cases and analysis around Minneapolis, right, which is where the protests were, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and stuff like that. And the infection rate at the time was half of what the statewide was, right? So there's still people obviously getting infected, and it was going to happen. But in the places where the protesting and the the rioting, if you want to go beyond there, was happening, half of what the state average at the time was. And the state was doing pretty good. The state was about like 3.4%, so it was better than where all the plans you wanted, which was under 5. So the state as a whole was doing good, but like in the areas where all the protesting was, they were doing even better, right? So, but the big thing with this year is the Democrats have offered some pretty generous stimulus packages and other stuff here that they want to get through to prop up, these businesses, to keep people in their houses, to keep all this other stuff, to bring down the costs of COVID, so that people can quarantine, do the stuff, lock down where they need to lock down, and then there's other monies for businesses to help them set up proper safety procedures, right? So not every business is like where I work. Like where I work, we have mask mandates, we got face shields, we got all this PPE, we got good social distancing guidelines, we got all that stuff is good. Good cleaning routines. We have a cleaning company come in and clean up and do all that stuff. We got infrared testing at the doors for temperature checks and all this other stuff. It does a pretty good job. And then if somebody shows symptoms of just being sick, or whatever, they feel sick and they got to leave home early there, they shut down that part of the facility. They get the cleaning crews in. So they're doing a lot where I work here to try to keep people safe, but that's not everywhere, right? I'm sure some of you guys in chat where you're working, you got some shitty PPE stuff if you're still working on there, and things there in business not doing enough business there, and that's kind of the big concern. And so the Democrats wanted to spend money to help prop up businesses and people who have lost their jobs, people, just keeping them paid and so that they can afford and do all that stuff, and then obviously help those that that are necessary to keep things running the best we can. The necessary work. You give them the proper PPE. There's in the Heroes Act there was a what was it, a $13 an hour hazard pay on top of there that they were willing to fund. So the Democrats are like, yeah, we got to take these precautions here to take and get control of the pandemic, right? So if we're going to do that, we're going to have to deal with the situation and give the proper stimulus to help keep these businesses and the citizens going, right?
Had Biden on the ropes on practically every subject. Don't get me wrong, Trump handled himself poorly. He definitely shouldn't have been interrupting, and he shouldn't have been so bullish. Now, being bullish against someone like Hillary Clinton, that actually is a good move, because she's a very, very savvy debater. She's a very clever woman, she's got command of all the facts, and she is intelligent. Joe Biden, the senile, sunsetting old man, it didn't need to be done. It didn't need to be done that way. Trump actually showed throughout the course of the debate, he did actually have all of the facts required in order to force Joe Biden into the kind of, pin him into the unwinnable position that he doesn't want to be in, where he's got to answer for something that he or his family have done in regards to corruption of the state that the media do not challenge him on. And so he has never had to come out and give a solid defense on. Trump got him on a bunch of...
We're halfway through this video, and all Carl is talking about is what Trump winning is the Hunter Biden stuff. That's it. That's the only thing that you trapped him in the corner and all this stuff here. That was a very small segment of the debate. And I don't know if that's Carl taking all the copium he can get for him and his audience, right? Is that just what it is here? Is like we're in a frame, oh, he went after Hunter Biden, Hunter Biden, Hunter Biden, Hunter Biden. That's all that's important. It's like, no, that's not. That's like not even for the American people, right?
Of these things, and Chris Wallace just leaps in the way. No, don't harm Mr. Biden's reputation. So yeah, but he is a liar. I mean, he did seem to have been lying about almost every point that he made and ascribing things that he had done to Trump and then ascribing Trump's positions to himself where they seemed advantageous. For example, the bringing back manufacturing stuff. It's like, Joe, aren't you the neoliberal type who's happy to export manufacturing to China? Didn't you in previous eras say, just positively praise China and how they're manufacturing things? Isn't this not your move? But then saying, oh no, I'm going to bring manufacturing back to the United States, that's what Trump has been doing. I mean, he said something like 700,000 jobs, but that's what the core...
Trump has not been bringing manufacturing back to the States, right? Manufacturing in the States is lower than what it was pre-recession. So largely what we have been getting back in this continued growth is manufacturing jobs that were lost to the recession, right? It's not expanding the manufacturing sector. It's there, and it's just largely not going to come back, like at all, right? It's just the way it is going here. So this is where I'll critique Biden. I don't like Biden's, the Buy America plan and all that other stuff and the kind of protectionism stuff. It's not going to, it's not going to work, period, in bringing stuff back significantly. Two, you're not dealing with the issues that the stuff's going to be gone and going to continue to go away. So let's deal with those issues, right? Let's promise those. But that's largely something you got to promise to the American people, because the American people are generally the Buy American, keep manufacturing here, keep the jobs here, and all this other stuff, right?
Pillar of Trump's campaign was in 2016.
It was a pillar of his campaign, and it's something he's failed at, like the carrier stuff. The carrier, he gave all the tax breaks to carrier, and all the jobs got cut. Anyways, right? So the carrier factor got all these free handouts from the government to save those jobs. Those jobs are gone, right? But Carl doesn't care about that. He thinks, well, ooh, manufacturing's up. Yeah, it's manufacturing's up because the recession was so bad. Like the recession was, the worst been to outside of the Great Depression, right? Like the worst economic situation there. So you're gonna lose a lot of jobs and work during that, and it's gonna take time to get them back and get up to the levels here. And we're still not to those levels.
And it's clearly what he has been trying to incentivize in his time in office. And then you're like, no, you've been getting rid of jobs. I'm the one bringing back jobs. It's like, that's ridiculous, Joe. Like, how can you think that we can't see what you've been doing and then see what Trump has been doing as well? And then just say, oh, yeah, no, actually, it's just reversed because Joe Biden said it. He just said it and he's just saying Trump's a liar. Because the entire thing that Joe Biden was saying, it's basically just orange man bad. That is just all it was. Orange man bad, liar, liar, liar. It's like, no, he's not lying. Trump's problem is the resolution of his statements, the precision with which he makes them. There is a general truth underlying basically everything that Trump says, but the details around it are very fuzzy. Whereas there's a very
No, there isn't, Carl. Not at all. Not at all.
very fine detail around what Joe Biden is saying, but absolutely no truth that underlies it and underpins it. And so there's nothing like real about what Joe Biden is saying. It's just all a mythology. It's a narrative construct. Whereas Trump is kind of...
So, I think Carl was one of the early ones that promoted the Trump derangement syndrome idea. The only one, so I think the Trump derangement syndrome is a honest, obviously not a real thing, but real thing in the sense of some mental capacity or anything there. But if it is a phenomenon and it's a real phenomenon, just in people are deranged and stuff about it. It's people like Carl right here, so that everything the president says there's some layer of truth, no matter how bogus, how big of a lie it is, right? Whereas his opponents, they're all lying, and there's no truth underlying anything they say. It's like Trump supporters have the Trump derangement syndrome, right? Like it's just a fact at this point.
Of a bluster, but essentially there is something true about what he's saying, and he's going in what I would say is the right direction, because I think that Trump is actually working in the interests of America. And I like the bit where he says, Joe, people can see that's not true. Nobody believes you, Joe. Because I think that there are a lot of people who don't believe Joe Biden. I think they realize that the game is up. The shell game is, actually, we've been screwing you this whole time. Yeah, you have. You guys have been screwing people. And then, like Joe Biden talking about the black community, man, I wish they'd asked him, what does it mean to say that if you don't vote for Biden, you ain't black? What does that mean? There were many other parts of it that I found frustrating, but these were the major ones. And in fact, one more is the way that Chris Wallace, when Trump would start pressing him on a point, rather than, I agree that Trump was being excessively belligerent and unnecessarily so, but rather than reframing and picking up the point because the point itself is legitimate and needs to be addressed, Chris Wallace would change the subject every time. There was never any time to talk about the goddamn thing in question. It's like, no, man, we need to have answers to the things that Trump is raising, because what Trump is raising is very much the critical points that are being raised on the internet, what people in what I'm guessing is sort of like the wider society may well have seen and thought for themselves. And I mean, Trump's response on critical race theory was fantastic. Why are you banning this? Oh, isn't this just sensitivity training? No, this is divisive racist nonsense. And Trump was absolutely right to call it exactly what it was, not back down on it and say it's got to be done. And then Biden can you condemn white supremacists? Sure. But it's all coming from the left. And it is all coming from the left. What?
Carl, no, it isn't. At all. Not at all, right? And he was asked, so this is the big Ben Shapiro tweet that was going around, right? That he had a transcript of the thing, and Chris Wallace was asking if Trump would be willing to condemn white supremacy. And he said, sure, give me a name. And, the Proud Boys came up, and Trump supported the Proud Boys. And just look at, like, the reaction of the Proud Boys. And everyone's like, well, he said, sure, earlier he'd be willing to condemn stuff there and stuff. No, he's not. When he's given a specific example, he's not willing to condemn it. Right? Because he knows those are his supporters, right? He's not going to shit on his supporters. He's not going to do a basket of deplorables on his own base that got him into office, he's just not going to do it, right? And it looks really bad to the rest of the country when he's like, "Oh, white supremacy, I'm not going to shout it down."
Have the Proud Boys burned down? What have the white supremacists burned down? How many people have they killed? The Black Lives Matter protests have killed somewhere north of 30 people now. One of those people...
So, this is wrong. This 30-person thing that he keeps pushing is wrong. Like, we went through this, I did this earlier, right? And then a vast majority of the deaths are unrelated to anything Black Lives Matter, right? So, there was... And some of them include, so like there's at the time we did it, there was 4 instances of police killing people. And in one such case, they were killing people at a gathering that had nothing to do with Black Lives Matter, right? But it was counted in that total on Wikipedia that he's holding on to. Also in there are 2 Boogaloo deaths, which are, far-right people that want to start a race war, right? So there's 2 deaths there that were included on there. In other sets, there was Black Lives Matter protesters run over by cars, right, from people that weren't in the protests or anything else like that, and killed and died, right? Several of those instances, right? At best, at the time, given the current information and all that stuff there, we could find 7 deaths maybe, if being the most generous to Carl's position on that there. So that meant 23 other deaths, largely of people that were protesters, or even if you want to get into lumping in like the rioters and stuff, or the looters and stuff in there, were the ones that were being killed. It wasn't that group killing other people. It was other people killing people in the groups, right? Similar groups.
Being a Trump supporter, an open Trump supporter in Portland, who was just gunned down in the street by a person who said, "What, I am 100% Antifa." And then Joe Biden goes on and goes, "Antifa's an idea, man." The hell are you talking about? We know they organize. They have social media accounts.
So Antifa, anti-fascism is an idea, 100%. White supremacy is an idea, 100%, right? So there's things here, but groups like the Proud Boys is something that there. So that was Biden's point, right? Like, who's the leader of Antifa, Carl? Who's the leader of Antifa that I can go and talk to, and who can do? What's the Antifa group, right? It's just, this is the brain rot Carl has.
CNN, Vice News, and NBC News have all done interviews with separate Antifa cells. They are certainly organized, and it's not like ideas just live independently in the air, separate from people. They live in people's heads. They make people do things. If you say, "Oh, it's an idea," then you're necessarily saying it's a bunch of people, Joe. We know that they organize, they tell us how they organize, and they give us advice on how to join them if we want. And they get favorable news coverage from mainstream media sources. For Joe Biden to just say, "Oh no, this doesn't exist, it's a myth." It's a myth that has killed loads of people, burned down hundreds of millions of dollars of property damages, and set up not 1, but 2 autonomous zones that claim to not be a part of the United States. Right. Just an idea, Joe. How can he get away with lies this big? That's the problem I have. Like, Trump's details, the fuzzy detail lies that are just small things that, you'd need to constrict in somewhat to get more accurately to the truth. Because Trump is full of bluster and he exaggerates everything. That's, okay, understandable. I can see that they're frustrating. And yes, on the small things, Trump is lying. But on the big...
No. This 100% Trump derangement syndrome for Carl here. Right? Shit. Do we want to go through the rest of this? Fuck it. We're gonna go through one long thing. We got the hours.
Whereas on the big things, Joe Biden...
Yeah, he is
just the most flagrant liar in the world. It is absolutely disgusting to me. I really find it annoying. And this is what drove me to hate the sort of corporate wing of politics anyway. This really is the essence of it, because the whole point is to cover up the big lie that Joe Biden is telling you. Because what Joe Biden is saying is not in your interests. It's not in your fucking interests to let the status quo, the Hillary Clintons, the Joe Bidens, the George Bushes of the world, to control the reins of state. They operate exclusively in the realm of corporate power and their own interests. They are deeply corrupt, and they will just lie to your face about it. They don't care about you or your opinion. A popular...
So I would say I'd leave out George W. Bush in the same thing with like Hillary and Biden, even if I don't particularly like Hillary, and then Biden's not my most favorite idea of a candidate in the whole world. But when you look at the stuff he's promising, how he's voted in the past, and stuff like that, that he's, and when I say voted in the past, I'm not like specific bills and stuff, but like in general with the rest of the Democratic Party, with the way the Democratic Party has moved left with the growth of the progressive wing since Obama. So I brought this up earlier. The Progressive Caucus is the largest it's ever been in its 30-year history, at just shy of 100 members in Congress right now. And because they are such a large portion of Congress, right, even a large enough minority, they have some sway. And so if you look at Biden's platform, or you look at the DNC platform, there is a lot of progressive policies in there. Now, it doesn't go as far as people would like, like that supported Bernie would like it to go, right? And I was a big Bernie supporter, right? So there's some things in there that's like, these are kind of the half measure stuff there, but there's also things in Bernie's platform, like Medicare for All. Medicare for All, Bernie and a lot of his supporters like to treat it like it's just on par with the rest of the world. It's not. It is if it enacted as Bernie laid it out, would be the most generous public health care program in the world, right? And you know what? I'm an American. I'm into a little bit of that American exceptionalism. Give us the best. We're Americans, right? That way. I mean, they aren't right-wing light. It's just not true. I mean, there's been like, you can see in comments up here earlier, we were talking about like the manifesto report. Like they're pretty on par with center-left parties around the world, right? The Democratic Party now is like based on their was it the 2018 or was it even the 2016 one? But yeah, they've been there. So at one point they had shifted a little more, where they were kind of similar to what a lot of parliamentary systems have in like a liberal Democrat party, and that's largely because of the third wave movement in the 80s and into the 90s. I mean, we'd have to look at what do you think are right-wing policies like the Democrats then? Like what are you considering things that would put them as like a right-wing light? Like, so presumably that means a party on the center left, like on par with your conservative party or the liberal Democrats kind of thing looking there. Because like the policy positions aren't there. Now, people will say, well, they haven't really enacted a whole lot of it here, but people don't pay attention to just how little control the Democrats have had in national government in the last 40 years, right? So the Democrats, if you really want to execute just a complete Democratic vision, right, Democratic policy, he's not against public health care, right? He's just not for single payer Medicare for all style system, right? He's for multi-payer universal healthcare stuff, right? That's not, so that's a lot of these things were ways that several other European countries have, right? So obviously the UK has the National Health Service, which is public and stuff there, but there are different ways to achieve universal healthcare. And when progressives were running, 4 years ago, you'd see the Kyle Kalinskis, even the Jimmy Dores, who were, wild and crazy at that time, and they were before Hillary won the nomination. We're talking about we want universal health care, right? Whether that's single payer, whether that's a multi-payer, whether that's we own the state owns the hospitals and stuff like that, and you do it that way, like the NHS, or you have this single payer system where you're the insurance, you're the only insurance in town, or public options and stuff like that. Ways through there, right? The goal for progressives 4 years ago was the universal healthcare, right? And getting to the rest of the developed world, universal, more affordable healthcare. And there are many ways to skin that cat and get to where you want to go. What about Reaganomics? I mean, Reaganomics is not Biden's policy at all. Like trickle down, like that's never been part of the Biden or the Democratic policy, largely, right? Maybe more in the blue dog section. Like I said, when the party did shift a bit more to the right, largely because of the failures in the 70s of Keynesian and neoclassical economic thought. Kind of fell out of favor as the neoliberalism arose on the new right. Right, like we have this stuff that we can look at history and where it was, and there's like so many people are willing to do like material analysis and stuff for other things, but then when it comes to politicians, they're gonna throw that all out and not pay any attention to it. I mean, Reaganomics is trickle down stuff. That's not what the Democrats thing. Like the trickle down is a here, clearly Republican idea that doesn't work and has been in place since Reagan's, where you cut the taxes of the wealthy, and all that money they have back now will then trickle down to everybody else, and it doesn't work that way. That's not the Democratic plan, right? Biden's up here talking about eliminating the Trump tax cuts, and then there's some other tax increases and stuff there. That's not Reaganomics, right? That's explicitly anti-Reaganomics, and that's largely what a majority of the Democratic Party is in favor for in doing that stuff. Now they're a little more concerned about taxes on everyday Americans, so they're a little against that, and they'll buy into that. But what do you mean they aren't undoing it? Where are the Democrats in favor of deregulation? There was some stuff that they deregulated, sure, and deregulation in and of itself isn't bad, right? Isn't inherently bad. There's maybe some cases where deregulation is a good plan and is a good idea, right? It depends on the specifics, but no, he wants to institute. The Democrats want to institute all sorts of regulations on, especially in like their climate policy and stuff like that. You can even look at other regulations on forcing insurance companies and through like the ACA to cover pre-existing conditions, right? That's a type of regulation they're pushing for that the Republicans would be anti-against, right? It's just, yeah, I don't see the Reaganomics things with the Democrats, right? Like, obviously they deregulated some aspects and stuff earlier when we go to like 80s, 90s, when in this big shift as they were adopting some more of these neoliberal ideas and trying to find a third way compromise between them. Largely that was because they were losing out on power, right? They were just getting decimated by this rising Republican stuff. Now, in your situation, you might look and say, and it's not even that different from what like the UK went through, right? With Tony Blair, they were part of a third way movement that was similar to what the Democrats were doing, and largely for the same reasons, right? Thatcher came to power, and this staunch neoliberalism that came with her and stuff was something they had to find some new compromise to and make it through here, right? And that's kind of leaving out the analysis. Now, a lot of people will say, "We'll just go full bore socialism," right? In America, I know was not an option, right? Like they were, it just wasn't an option when you're fighting, against socialism. You got the Cold War stuff there. That just was never going to be a way they could run. And even liberal, like in the American sense, there was polling they did in the late 70s that showed a majority of Americans were against that, right? And so if you're in some kind of leftist thought and you favor like democracy and all that other stuff, well then at some point the leaders in charge, in order to get into power in the first place, have to respond to what the electorate wants, right? Or at least promise that stuff in order to get into power and maintain the power to do stuff. Right? It's not always going to be right. It's not always going to be there. But yeah, I'm not saying Tony Blair was good, but I'm just saying that the stuff that progressives and stuff people on the left still want to hold and say is the Democratic Party is stuff from an era when there was a drastic political change and shift. Like we're in that era right now where we're probably seeing drastic political shift, and that's largely and big reason why we can look at the move to the left of the Democratic Party. Now, at the same time, we're getting the huge rise in fascism alongside it in the Republican Party. The Republican Party is just losing itself to all the worst ails that they try to cover up with the dog whistles and all that other stuff. It's just blatant now with Trump. right? And if we'll see now, they're like the Republican Party was willing to use that before. We'll see how well the Republican Party responds to it after they get their conservative majority on the Supreme Court with the ACB when that goes through. Um, you know, they've used it. They got to their point, and I think it was Nate Silver that made this point. Well, now they're at the point where what the party and the party elites actually wanted, in like the Republican Party and all the shift and change and stuff they were going for. Now that they've gotten it, this move here, the conservative majority on the Supreme Court, where they can start stripping all that other stuff away, they're gonna say fuck it to their. Are they gonna completely say fuck it to their base, or are they gonna go and lean into that base and more that Trump base that they've built up? On that particular issue, yeah, the Patriot Act was not a good thing, right? It was not something that should have been put in place, right? But that, on one policy, that doesn't mean that they're right wing on theirs. Through, you know what I mean? That's not what it's going to be like. But yeah, the Patriot Act thing is just not something good, and we can argue that it's not, maybe even not just a right and left wing thing either, right? Depending on what you're using and what you're saying when you say right or left wing. But yeah, the Patriot Act was not a good thing, right? There's a lot of bad votes Biden had. I won't deny that. I won't do there. I don't particularly like Biden. I wanted Bernie, right? Who's been good on that stuff.
Who wants your adulation, well, that gives you some claim over him, doesn't it? That means that if you're not happy, then he might listen to you because he actually gives a shit about your opinion. Joe Biden doesn't care about you at all. He doesn't think about you as a person. You are a number on a spreadsheet. Anyway, I'm looking forward to the next debates. I think this set the scene rather well.
That number on the spreadsheet stuff is just not true with the big release. What was it, Channel 4 in the UK? Had like over 200 million Americans and all that data and all that number on there to try to win and suppress votes and to discourage African American engagement and stuff like that. Their whole online campaign. So no, it's not Trump's listening to people. Their numbers on the spreadsheet for Trump to win, right? And largely, I'd probably look at the same way with Biden to some extent to about any politician, right? Like look at the Joe Rogan situation when Joe Rogan kind of said, I kind of favor Bernie, and Bernie ran with it, and there was a lot of controversy over that. And people on the left are like, fuck him. Joe Rogan's got this big thing, and we'll just take his numbers or whatever, and we'll convince him or switch him over. It's good that the audience there, he's doing there, and those people are just numbers to people on the left to achieving their goals, right? Like, you want to say that against anything. It's going to be largely a thing for a lot of things, right? It's not going to be the same personal stuff. It's not going to be like your close family, if you have good relations to that, or your close friends, right? Where those are people to you. Those aren't the numbers. Like when we get into the large tens of millions of people there to vote a certain way, to get into power, to try to meet their demands and stuff, it's always going to look like numbers to people, to anybody that's doing it. Well, so this is a fun thing, right? And this could go to not a fun thing for like the election and stuff, but a fun thing in. I had an idea I brought up during the primaries, right? When Bernie wasn't doing well, and it's like, well, maybe the last 4 years talking about how rigged and you're fighting all this stuff that's super rigged against you, it's fraudulent, or all these other claims the left have made, probably suppressed voter turnout for Bernie this time around. So even though voter turnout in the primaries before COVID was larger than what it was in 2016, and they largely went towards the Biden camp, right? They're largely the older voters, weren't necessarily the demographic that would support Sanders compared to the young people Sanders thought he was going to bring out. We may have suppressed that. Now, people think there's another report that Democrats, strategists inside, are thinking that's what Trump's trying to do with saying the election's rigged. It's fraudulent. It's not all this other stuff. Mail-in voting, all this voting fraud, your vote's not going to count, all this other stuff. The Democrats seem to think that that's going to suppress Democratic turnout, right? Or Democrats taking advantage of voting, right? And so Trump, may just be posturing about not accepting the results of the election, or it's already going to be coming in the bag that if these mail-in voting ballots weren't here, I'd win anyways. And all this talk to try to suppress vote. And so there was like some internal like list, like if you give a somebody who's going to canvass for a candidate, and on how to say, well, don't say it's fraudulent or Trump is rigging the election or anything like that. Say, like Biden did in the thing in the debate last night. It's your job, go out, vote. You're the ones that are going to decide the election. Keep that your message. So people that get up and go out and vote. But yeah, that's what's thought by the Democratic strategists, is that they're more likely to be hurt by Trump saying it's fraudulent than Trump's supporters are, right? All right. There's not enough left. She's going to shill. We got a bunch more to go through. So we got this. We got some Tim Pool. We got two of them, right? Because Tim Pool cannot shut up. And will continue to stick his foot in his mouth. So let me do, because Tim Pool's on that side. Oh, Rosie. We'll move me up here. That'll get there. That way we can see that silly face of Tim's.
I think quite possibly the best reaction to the debate last night came from CNN, from Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. Jake Tapper said it was a hot mess in a dumpster fire, and Dana Bash said it was an S show. Okay, I'm avoiding the swear, but you get the point. She said this on cable TV. They don't really swear, but she did. She went for it. You know what? They're both kind of right, but where they're wrong, Jake Tapper said, and it's mostly Donald Trump's fault. That's not true. I mean, I guess you can kind of say that, but Trump is doing what Trump always does. Look, they were going into a WWE style wrestling match. They knew this. They had years to prepare. And what did Joe Biden do? He played the exact same game Trump does. So when people watch this and they're like, Joe Biden's like, man, will you shut up? And everyone's like, oh, snap, Joe Biden, smackdown. It's like, okay, I get it. You're not really debating. You're trying to score points. It was more.
So, no, I don't know if you watched the debate last night, Efkin Coffee. But no, it was Trump. Trump was largely turning it into a shit show. Yeah, Biden got angry at some time and told him to shut up, right? And at the point, just, you reach the edge and was like, just shut up, I'm talking, and, do this and get back to what he's saying, right? And Tim Pool trying to turn it into like, oh, this is a WW. Yeah, oh, it was. Trump was like jumping on the word. Last night was like, everybody's like, it's WWE. Nah, WWE's got a little bit better showmanship about what they do. What it was peak YouTube, Twitch political discussions. It was internet blood sports, right? Which I'm all in favor of watching a good dumpster fire, but that does nothing to advance any of the ideas on there. Now, there's a couple of things here, right? So I don't know how true this is, but it has been suggested, or at least I've seen it suggested, that people with speech impediments or stutter particularly, if you harangue them, they'll stumble and they'll get to pause, take their words and stuff like that to catch up, so they're not stuttering through that stuff. How much of that was largely Donald Trump's plan as a strategy? I'm just going to harangue this guy so he stutters up there and he doesn't look good. And then obviously it blew up in his face. Yeah, to get in the punch. I would have loved to seen Joe Biden hop over that or run from behind that podium and just clock Trump, right? It would have done him no favors. Well, maybe it would have done some favors, but to clock him and stuff. I want to see, God, have you ever seen, you probably see some in the UK. You get some goofy stuff in the parliament and stuff like that. But, there's the instance in Japan. I think it was, I believe it was in Japan. And they got into fist fights on the floor of their parliament. Oh, I would love to see that kind of stuff with politics on the floor and just that throw back and forth between people on there. Get real messy. But it doesn't look good in America. We like our civility. you know, to some extent, like some what do I want to say, mirage or not mirage, but there's some I'm drawing a blank on the word, but that the some feeling that we might take that civility and civil discourse as it is. Yeah.
Or like, I wouldn't call it a debate. I'd say that Joe Biden got served. That's what it was, right? It's like Donald Trump and Joe Biden may have well just been breakdancing, so we could have gotten it over with and then started arguing about why our guy won. Both sides are claiming it was really bad for the other guy, but for the most part, I'll tell you this. I think Trump won the debate. Now, the betting odds are against Trump. They're saying that Trump, well, I don't know if they're saying Trump lost, but they're saying Biden is more likely to win the general now following that debate performance. I think Trump won the debate. I think Trump dominated the debate. And I think Trump's character defects are hurting him really, really bad. And I know there's a lot of Trump supporters who say things like,
so, and this right here, this stuff that, yeah, Trump didn't win, right? But see, this is largely, and I made this point about even like the, I was on a debate, and people was like, well, why would you want to debate? And you say that debates don't really change people's minds, right? In this format, right? Like I said earlier, this debate last night was very much peak Twitch, YouTube, political debate shows, panels, internet blood sports. If you guys remember that on YouTube from a few years ago, that's what it was. And my point here, given what we saw with Sargon, what we see with Tim, people who are already on Trump's side are like Trump won, and everybody here looks at Biden won, right? Like, I think if we take in objective look at what was done, or try to be as objective as we can, it's hard to say Trump won at all. Like, Biden had some really good lines. Biden, Trump didn't really have those. I said that when we were watching it live, the thing that should be on every ad going forward is Trump. There's a shot where Biden was just chuckling at him, so he had a big smile on his face. Trump was just beat orange red in his face, looking around there, looking down to the side there, and it's like, put that up there. That should be in every ad going forward, right? Because Trump looked really, really bad on that part. But largely, and it goes with like the longstanding research into the topic, is that these presidential debates have a marginal impact on the vote at best, if nothing. Right? Maybe you can get 1 point from a debate, and so where 1 point would matter is if you're in a pretty, less than a 1 point difference as running. But if you're at that point, there's a lot of other variables that are probably wrong too that you can chalk it up to over, the debates. Oh yeah, that was not a debate at all, and we don't like the presidential debates aren't really debates anyways. It's all about a minute or two to get your line in and get it out right and stuff like that, so you can clip it and go for ads and stuff like that. But yeah, largely, so like the response we're seeing from the people that were staunch Trump to begin with is like they're always gonna love their guy, right? They're always gonna find a way to rationalize why their guy is still right and still good, right? I mean, this happens with like Sargon, even though it's more of a meme right here that when Sargon debates, Sargon is no good at debates. People will acknowledge it over and over again, but Sargon still has fans, still has followers, and still has other stuff there, right? I remember the one line, and which really turned me on this, and that's why I won't debate like Nazis or anything like that. There's no debating. They're not changing any minds, having a scream fest back and forth at each other. Now, in other things that are less controversial and stuff, or just like less important, like I'll go on and debate like a creationist or something like that, right? Largely, they're not a big impact on those debates, and they're not sitting there, and it's something there. It's less important and stuff there. But I remember, and the way it changed it was Digibro talking to Destiny, and Digibro was like, well, no, I forget who was Destiny was debating or something like that, or what debate they were talking about, but he said, no, he was right, he had all the right points, he didn't do sit there, and it's like, Destiny's like, well, Don't you in a debate have to make convincing arguments to go through there and actually argue well to win a debate? It's like, no, as long as you come in with the right opinions, you're going to win anyways, in my book. Right? And it's like, so most people aren't going to change their minds. It's going to be, if you already agreed with them, you agree with them no matter what. Yeah, so much lies. And I think, like I brought up earlier, like part of I think Trump's belligerence was trying to get Biden to break. Oh, Jeremy Paxman? Paxman? Alright, I'll have to look him up. And check it out.
Why should I care if Trump's got character defects or if he's rude, if he's getting the job done? And that is correct. If you really thought about it, you probably wouldn't care. But come on, we know why Obama got elected. Obama did not get elected because he was, bringing up these really great policies. Obama was like, well, look, my thing has always been conflict, crisis, foreign policy. So I look at Barack Obama and Biden in terms of bombing civilians, drone strikes, spying, arresting people. But I mean, what can we really talk about the Obama administration and praise? Obamacare? I mean, a lot of people complain about that. So I look, Barack Obama got elected on his charisma, his charm, his celebrity status. You might not like it, but that probably was the biggest factor in his election. Now,
Obama had no celebrity status before he ran. Most people couldn't even point to who Obama was before he ran for the primary and started winning states. Oh yeah, there's way too many to fact check. Like it is a mess. Like oh, and I love like the fact checking. Like someone, I think James Medlock on Twitter, he's a big SocDem economics kind of guy, and I'll talk about those policies on Twitter. Tweeted out a fact check where Biden says, yeah, Trump hasn't lowered drug prices, and the fact check comes back, well, drug prices through the year through 2019 are down 0.3%, like less than 1%. So Biden was wrong, so we're fact checking it, so they have gone down under there. It's like, are you serious? That's like a negligible difference, right? Like 0.3% is nothing. Just say prices have come down, things have come cheaper, right? And so it's just like a mess of a fact check. Like you'd go out of your way to fact check that way.
Now in 2016, Donald Trump was a bull crashing the doors of the ivory tower, looking Hillary Clinton in the eye and saying, you are the establishment, and I am going to come and rain on your parade. People loved it. Like Michael Moore said, it was the biggest FU in human history. That's why a lot of people said Donald Trump. Well, we're past that now. Joe Biden still kind of represents the previous administration. Maybe many people won't want to let him in, but are they going to get that same reaction of Donald Trump going wrong to the establishment? I don't necessarily think so. And I think Trump, Frank Luntz tweeted about it. Here's what he said. Trump is in total control of the debate stage, but he's too rude to win over many new votes. I would like to use this debate to teach my students how to communicate, but I can't. It would be unfair to my students. Frank has a really great thread about undecided voters. He's a pollster. I'm not saying his word is absolute or anything like that, but I'll tell you, man, how I felt watching that debate. If I was going to give if I was going to assign, points.
Yeah, the bombing point, the imperialism, stuff like that. Yeah, well, Trump, see, this is the big thing. Trump quit reporting civilian deaths in his presidency. Officially, that's one of the things that Obama would report. So now we rely on NGOs and independent organizations to give us the numbers. So based on what those organizations are saying, yeah, Trump is dropping way more bombs, but none of it's coming out of like the official report, right? And this is largely what comes through when you look at like people like to say Obama was the deporter in chief, but what largely comes with that number, when people who are familiar with the data going back years and stuff looking at it, is that there was a change at the end of the Bush administration where they changed what they counted. And that was like, if you were caught within 100 miles of the border or whatever and just, taken back right away instead of processed or anything like that, those started counting as deportations. um, under like the last year, maybe two of Bush. And so throughout Obama's entire tenure, it's like, oh, Obama's deported way more than everybody else. And it's like, yeah, but previous administrations, they weren't counting those, right? And when you look at the things that were counted in previous administrations, Obama's numbers were going down. And so a lot of people that, especially progressives, get to harp on Obama is like, oh, he's the deporter in chief and all this other stuff, deported more than anybody else. He's a big right wing leader. And it's like, but he's not, right? Like, and people who are familiar with the stuff, estimate that no, his total numbers, even with that change there, if we had done those same changes going back, I think it was to Reagan or whatever, it's like, no, the previous presidents were deported way more under those same numbers. Yeah, it's not. Like, there's nothing in that debate that demanded. Like, that was bad debate structure. There's no arguments being made, right? The whole point of determining whether a debate is good is, how well you articulate your arguments, right? And we have whole contests, whole stretches here on how to properly do this. But what I think largely they find here is for the entertainment spectacle, people like the entertainment spectacle, so they don't care about how well you argue your point. And if you're all that's going to be is the spectacle, it's not going to do anything for you, right?
From 1 to 100. I would say Donald Trump 57, Joe Biden 43. Oh, I know. There's probably a lot of people saying, "What are you nuts?" Donald Trump debated. Donald Trump dominated. He did. He totally did. There's a few areas where he made mistakes. I want to highlight these things. And there's
one-on-one interviews with good interviews. Like that Chris Wallace interview with Trump was really good. I was surprised that Chris Wallace pushed as much as he did on Trump. Now, there's some stuff that he let slip and slide. Who was the other one that became the meme? Who was the other one that interviewed Trump that became the meme? What was his name? It was a journalist I wasn't familiar with before he did it. God. Andrew Neil would be good. The way he got Ben Shapiro. Yeah, the Axios one. Yeah. What was that guy's name? Because I'd never heard of I'd never seen or heard of the guy before, so I don't. The name doesn't come to mind.
There's a few areas where he was vulnerable, and the media is going after him with absurd and ridiculous lies. Joe Biden had some good attacks on Trump, but I think for the most part, Trump held his own, pushed back on Biden, and there's several key areas. One, mail-in voting. When Donald Trump was going off on mail-in voting, he was saying it's fraud like you've never believed. You got what happened in Manhattan. You've got what happened in New Jersey. Bad things happening in Pennsylvania. You've got people,
Yeah, both need to be in the hot seat. I agree. Every presidential candidate should be in the hot seat, right, on that stuff. Honestly, I don't know why the debates... Well, I think I know why the debates were so big, is that when they first did the one, it wasn't normal and stuff too, but when they first did the televised debate, I think it's pretty common knowledge that, or pretty well accepted that Kennedy beat Nixon simply because of the flop sweat that Nixon had on TV, right? I don't know how much truth is that in actual data, but that's kind of the common knowledge. I think that's largely why we put so much emphasis on the debates since then, is they feel that made the big change. Well, ratings too, yeah, they get a lot of people on, but yeah. But like that town hall, like I think that town hall was, even more devastating to Trump than anything else, right? Like Trump was struggling all over that. Jonathan Swan, that's the name.
Getting the wrong ballots. He went off for like 2 or 3 minutes just ranting about, and Joe Biden just sat there doing nothing. And then Joe Biden goes, there's no evidence. That's it. That's all he could say. He couldn't say anything. And then, of course, we get the media class. Look, the media very obviously is in the bag for Joe Biden. It's kind of hilarious to see journalists coming out and saying, don't interview Proud Boys. Why? Oh, it's because Proud Boys aren't white supremacists. But this is another area of for Trump that he had a real...
Proud Boys are very much white supremacists, right? They may not, they want their American chauvinism. They want their, but like a lot of the things they say they want, may not be explicitly, and this is kind of the stupidity of people like Tim Pool, right? Like, I could say something out here, but the implication underneath it, or the dog whistle, if I'm at dog whistling, is for, you know, like white supremacy or something other than what I'm actually telling you, right? Like, the big one I like to look at is Richard Spencer, right? And the alt-right going, peaceful ethnic cleansing. Peaceful ethnic cleansing. Well, we'll just move them peacefully. We don't want to harm them. We don't want to get physical and stuff like that. We don't want to get violent. Well, then the obvious first question to that, right, to any kind of ethnic cleansing. So what if the people you pay money to don't want to leave, right? Now how are you going to do it? How are you going to get them out, right? At that point, it's going to come down to force, right? And you're going to do basically the same kind of ethnic cleansing that every other every other regime that's engaged in it has done through history. Yeah, I'm not against interviewing Proud Boys, right? Like, that's silly. Interview the Proud Boys, talk to them, and make them look stupid and silly, right? Go on and, like, right, give them the Andrew Neil treatment and dealing with their ideas. I'm not familiar with Nick Griffin. Yeah, there is no substantial evidence for any of that stuff that he's claiming, right? And we got, so particularly on that, I got a video after we get through like the thoughts on the debate today, those videos. I got a Sinatra Says video who goes full conspiracy theory about all this stuff, but he cites a couple of certain examples, and so I looked at them. So that'll be more of what is traditionally one of my responses. We go into a full dive, deep dunk on that case and the thing he pushes through. It's a really bad video. But you know, it's Sinatra Says. His whole channel is bad.
Opportunity to dominate and actually win. Look, Donald Trump needed to say only one thing. During the debate, one of the areas in which I think Trump still comes out ahead, but where he could have done better, is when he was asked to denounce white supremacists and right-wing militias. The first thing Trump said is, sure, that was it. And now a lot of people are saying he didn't condemn white supremacy. He's refusing to do so. He could have made a bolder statement than that. Instead, he tried to push back on Antifa. Now here's the...
So here, let me bring this up, right? Because they're lying about this. So where's the... Ben's tweet's got to be one of the ones up here right now. So the question that he said sure to, Wallace asked, "Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups?" And sure, all right. So that was a cutting him off, right? And so he left the question open. And to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in the number of these cities we saw in Kenosha and as we've gotten to Portland. Sure, I'm prepared to do it, but I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing. I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace. Then the question is, well, then do it, right? Denounce it. Come out and say it. Do it. And then what do you want me to call them? Give me a name, right? And so when he's given the Proud Boys stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what, somebody's got to do something about Antifa on the left. And the Proud Boys went fucking crazy. Like, have you seen, there's been people that tweeting from different Proud Boy accounts, or even going to like 4chan and getting the anonymous accounts and stuff, 4chan, 8chan, whatever it is, and they're all up in arms like, all right, this is Trump telling us we want to go kill, we want to go kill these people. We're going to stand up and do something. Go get them. Go do this, all this stuff. They saw that as praise, that they're printing shirts with those words on it now, being legitimized and doing all this other stuff. Oh, the wartime Waffen SS. Oh, yeah, that's why the Richard Spencer, the clean cut neo-Nazi and all that stuff was coming off there, and they have to act that way. But who is the other one that was pretty had that kind of Richard Spencer style take in the UK for the longest time? What was it, the National Front Party leader? Maybe it's the same guy you're talking about. Oh, is that the same guy we're talking about here? Then I know who you're talking about. If we're talking about the same person.
Here's the reality. What do you think Americans care about right now? Do you think Americans are sitting in their homes going, oh, the white supremacists? No, that's the paranoid, delusional far left that think white supremacists are lurking around every corner. Regular Americans are hearing about riots from Antifa. Joe Biden would not condemn Antifa. And this was a huge net gain for Donald Trump.
Well, I just saw you brought up, like, he was a member of the European Parliament. I'm pretty sure the party leader I was thinking of was. No, not Tommy Robinson, no. But this guy back in, I think did most of his work in the 70s, 80s, into the 90s and stuff. Was largely where it was. Maybe I got the party wrong, but I was pretty sure he was on the European Parliament too. So when you said that, I think that's who we were talking about. But maybe we're talking about two different white supremacists, you know, seeing that they're plentiful enough as is, right?
We've watched the riots. We've seen the Black Lives Matter extremists. Joe Biden refused to condemn it. In fact, Joe Biden denied it even existed, saying that it's just an idea. Terrible mistake. Absolutely. Let's go through some of the things. I want to go through some of the things.
Yeah, not Farage. No. This was a guy who was caught. God, who did I... Like, I'm not going to find the name, but he was a leader of some party. Was it like British Front or some... It's one of the more far-right parties. I think founded in like the late 70s and then through the 80s and 90s. And at one point he was in the Parliament. There was a... God, somebody did... It might have been a Timba on Toast video that was talking about larger things on that there, but there's somebody along that veins. I watch way too much of this stuff that I can think of here, trying to piece everything back together, especially from things that aren't in my country. But yeah, but he was talking, you know, publicly. His rhetoric was well under control, and then privately there was meetings with people where he was that they had recordings of that where he was openly. You know, in his white supremacy and his neo-Nazism and stuff like that. And talking about how to get this stuff in, right? I think it was in a video done talking about, like, the Richard Spencer idea and stuff and, like, tracing the history of back. It was a while ago. It was probably about a year ago that I saw it. Maybe John Tyndall. Yeah, like I said, it's been a while since I've seen the video, and largely was to, you know, show, like, the history of the like, things like Richard Spencer does here. It's like, well, hey, this isn't new. This is stuff we've seen previously.
Things I've pulled up and explain what's going on.
And I think Richard Spencer might have actually been in one of those meetings that got recorded too before he was big, or somebody associated with his movement and stuff. But yeah.
So, Majid Nawaz, he's the guy who coined the phrase regressive left, intellectual dark web type. He's a great dude. He says, Biden was weak on that Proud Boys versus Antifa exchange. Why? Trump's base doesn't care if he refused to condemn Proud Boys. But Biden's base see violent Antifa black bloc rioting in the streets. Now we see Biden refuse to condemn by name or even acknowledge they exist. It's what I have literally been saying for months. Biden need only say no. Now here's what's going on. They're saying, don't interview the Proud Boys. Why? Because they'd find out the Proud Boys aren't white supremacists. Oh no, their leader actually isn't a white dude. Enrique Tarrio, the leader of the Proud Boys, I think he's Afro-Cuban. I'm not entirely sure, Enrique. I'm not entirely sure what...
You don't have to be white to be a white supremacist, Tim. Right? We've had Jewish Nazis. We've had all sorts of minorities that will stand up and, you know, oppress... You know, their group of people the same way under there in exchange for the benefits that being the good token to the oppressors is for, right? So just saying that, oh, well, he's not white, so it's not a white supremacist, right? Like, I mean, Blair White is hella transphobic, right? We all know that. And she's a trans person. But this idea, well, she's trans, she can't be transphobic. Okay, be that kind of disconnected from reality there. But two, going to Majid Nawaz for any kind of analysis on this stuff is just dumb, right? So there's a poll a few weeks back, right, during all this when the mainstream media, right, we're going to use that there, we're talking about how, ooh, Biden's got to go out and be tougher on the violence and stuff there. Oh, he's falling bar, he's losing all this other stuff. And there's a big poll that came out and said that majority of Americans think Biden's words and talking about the violence and stuff are just helping the situation, just to improve the situation. A majority of Americans said Trump was making it worse. right? So a lot of people that this kind of idea that floats around here, and this kind of part of the idea that Destiny holds on to when he made his comments about giving his blessing to white redneck militias and stuff like that to gun down looters and rioters and stuff like that. Part of that comes around here, and I know this from here because he shared an analysis of the 1968 riots after Martin Luther King was assassinated. Right, but what's largely changed in these two situations, I think, is the largely the racial animosity, right, that was present in 1968. Right, you just had a decade plus of civil rights movement, desegregation, Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, all these things here that were moving to bring African Americans, at least in theory, more equal to the rest of the country, treating them like the same citizens that you treat a white person as, right? And so that racial animosity over the 10 years of change and stuff was still largely there, that the civil rights movement faced the backlash. And so when it's gonna be bad if I say uppity when I refer to the riots. God damn it. Well, I don't know. Hold on. Am I back? Am I alive? Anybody hear me? We got a pretty bad thunderstorm out here by me, and so I've seen the power flicker a little bit. So I may cut out permanently on this here. If I'm still here, if you can still hear me, let me know in chat. But what I was getting at was the the racial animosity and stuff, and so when they rioted over and protested over the death of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., it was like, oh, those uppity blacks again, so we're going to vote against them, right? And so that's the largely the idea they think still holds true. And it's like, I don't think the situation surrounding... Oh, I never went away? Thank you. I just see my screen flickered here. I had a browser issue on the stream manager. Thanks, Maddie, but... All right, so don't get here. But the situation in 1968 is not the same situation here. And so what largely is Trump's, the looting starts, the shooting starts, and all his rhetoric is actually exacerbating the problem. Is that at least what a majority of Americans think, right? And so this idea Majit Nawaz is pushing isn't a thing.
What your ethnic background is, but he's not white. He's not a white guy. He's certainly not a white supremacist. And the Proud Boys aren't white supremacists. You want to call them names and criticize them, you can do so, but please get close to what they are. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to call them right-wing provocateurs and violent, we can have an argument about it. And I'll say, well, look, there's been violence from the Proud Boys. Typically, Antifa starts the fight with them. If you leave them alone, they walk around, waving little American flags, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, that's not true. Not true at all. Like, we know... They planned violence against Antifa. There was a big undercover thing that caught them with Andy Ngo, which Andy Ngo spreads all the misinformation about Antifa, right?
But there are criticisms of the Proud Boys for sure. They recently went to Portland. I said it was a bad idea. It turned out to be okay, so fine. But there's things you can criticize them for if you want to. If you interview them, it will actually debunk the narrative coming out that Trump refused to condemn white supremacists. But let's read a little bit more about what Majid Nawaz says. He says, so Biden, and mind you, Majid Nawaz is a radio host in London, I think for LBC, it was at London Broadcasting Company. He's a liberal dude, liberal guy. Here's what you got to understand. Here's what he said. So Biden inadvertently revealed Trump's allegation is correct. Democrats are covering for Antifa. No one sane believes it's just an idea. And Antifa does not sit comfortably with the base Biden needs to win over, even me. I imagine Nawaz isn't. I don't believe he's in the U.S. I think he's in London, so he's not going to be voting, but it's true. Perhaps the real reason why, quote, this won't end well. And despite everything we see with our own eyes in Portland, etc., still you repeat this myth that Antifa is just an idea. Seriously, you think us stupid? We know what we see, a loosely affiliated violent network of black shirts. And their presence disturbs middle America. And now,
I love a Middle Eastern man living in London talking about middle America and what middle America thinks. Yeah, it's really dumb. It's like, I can say whatever, I can say whatever to you. That doesn't, even under like things. So I use like the Richard Spencer peaceful ethnic cleansing line, right? So just ask, and Tim would probably be one of the idiots that said, well, Richard Spencer and the alt-right don't want to kill minorities to get them out of the country or make their ethno-state. Right? They want peaceful ethnic cleansing. It's like, what ends peaceful ethnic cleansing is when someone says, I'm not leaving. That doesn't want to leave there. So even if you offer them, money to relocate, say, to Africa or somewhere else, and they try, this is my home. I grew up here. I love it here. This is where I'm going to say this here. I don't know anything about Africa. I can't speak any of the language and stuff there. You're going to go ship me off over there where they don't speak English. I can't speak any other language. You're going to put me over there where all my degree and certifications, if I have them, aren't valid, right? And I'm going to be stuck doing something else. I'm not leaving my home for that, right? And so obviously the peaceful ethnic cleansing line is violent. Is just regular violent ethnic cleansing, right? Ultimately to get to their goal. And I don't know if Tim did defend that. I didn't follow Tim or was any super aware when Richard Spencer was at his peak popularity. But it wouldn't surprise me if Richard Spencer had come out today. Tim would have been taking that same stance with Richard Spencer and the alt-right.
Donald Trump is going to litter the internet and TV with advertisements showing Antifa, showing them waving their flags, and Joe Biden saying, nah, that's just an idea. And then I didn't catch this part, but I saw someone post that Donald Trump responded, getting hit in the head with a baseball bat is not an idea. I didn't hear him say that. Someone said he did. So maybe.
So, but what's also missed is that idea, not an organization line that Biden was using, actually came from the FBI director about Antifa. Trump's FBI director said Antifa is more of an idea than an organization, right? So Trump's own people say that here, right? And that clip was going around last night. It's like, ooh, right? So it seems like the actual people that are on that deal with these organizations and stuff like that, that the Proud Boys would be above and be considered terrorist organizations, or at least thinking about classifying them as such, says, yeah, Antifa is more of an idea than an organization, right?
Maybe he did, maybe he did, I don't know. But that's what Trump's going to put that in ads all over the place. Here's what, check this out. On my Twitter, what's happening? President Trump says Proud Boys should stand back and stand by when asked to condemn white supremacists at the presidential debate. It's really interesting how they conflate the two. Because he was asked to condemn white supremacists and right-wing militias that were that were starting violence, I suppose, of which it's extremely rare anything like that happens. It doesn't. And then Trump said,
it's not extremely rare, right? Like, the Proud Boys have caused a lot of shit and they've planned it. Like I brought up earlier, Andy No was caught on camera hanging out with, or was it Proud Boys or was it Patriot Prayer? They're different things, but they're talking about committing violence against the counter protesters that were there, right? And then it broke out and got violent, right? I think that was the was it Battle of Stanford or whatever that the right wing chuds think is a great thing, standing up to the left, owning the libs.
Said sure, Trump said who, and Biden said Proud Boys, and then Trump said stand back and stand by. Stand back and stand by. Now they're conflating that with white supremacy. I'm sorry, that's not the case. Right.
It's not. The Proud Boys are, but like I said earlier, the rest of the statement that Tim's leaving out, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what, somebody's got to do something about Antifa on the left, right? Hopefully the rain's not too bad. You guys hear that over the...
Below it, however, politics trending, Antifa. Trump does not condemn white supremacy when asked about the topic during the first presidential debate. You see how they do that? Stand back and stand are trending. They could have, in the Antifa section on Twitter, said Joe Biden refuses to condemn Antifa. This is how the game is played. And do you...
Why would you want to condemn anti-fascism, right? That'd be enough, yeah. It's basically there. And then his whole poll watchers thing, right? The way he tried to get on like the supporters of his that in Philadelphia, like nobody was voting or anything like that yet. It hasn't started, but they went in, they weren't registered poll watchers, but they came in and demanded they were poll watchers. Essentially, he wants them there to intimidate people, right? That's not what you want out of there. Like, if you want to be a poll watcher, sign up, get registered, get the training, right? Do all that stuff. Don't just show up on the day there. At that point, you're just trying to intimidate other voters, right? And so they're not going to put that stuff there. But that's largely what that stand back, stand by means. Especially when later in the debate, I forget the time and see if it was there, but when asked if Trump would accept the election and a peaceful transition of power. I have a typo. What did I do? I don't see it. Yeah, I don't see it. Oh, Pim Tool. All right. You got me on that one. Yeah. Yeah, I'm too nice for them, aren't I? Boys, what I was saying, like, the stand back, stand by stuff, and then all the comments about how he's not going to accept the election and the peaceful transfer of power line later. Like when he was asked point blank, he dodged and jumped around all that stuff. And well, if it's legitimate, well, it's like, so obviously right now you're saying it's not legitimate, and you're telling your followers, be prepared. We're gonna get physical. We're gonna get violent here to ensure I stay in power, right? Now, largely, I don't think that's going to happen because I remember, was it a year and a half ago, maybe now? There was the report that the Pentagon had a Trump removal plan if he tried to not step down and hand the reins of power over if he lost. Right? So I don't think even if he tries to do this, it's going to go well for him.
You think regular Americans sitting back and watching their cities burn are going to be like, well, that's normal. I must be crazy. No, they're going to be like, some dude showed up to my neighborhood and threatened to burn my house down. We just had a guy in Louisville. They demanded he yell Black Lives Matter. He wouldn't do it. I got some more for you. Andy No tweeted, Rose City Antifa is a group. Antifa Seven Hills is a group. Antifa Sacramento is a group. Atlanta Anti-Fascists is a group. Youth Liberation Front is a group. There are many, many Antifa groups, and they are violent. Magin responded, we all see this with our own eyes.
And this is why you can throw Majid Nawaz's commentary this out. That he's citing Andy No, who's a known propagandist and a liar. Oh, no. His base, sure, on the street and stuff like that. But like in terms of actually transferring power over, there was reports that the military's already said no. Like, if he loses, they're going to take him out. He still says that. He still tries to hold that, right? And I got another video on here that's going to cover, probably going to tread some of the same ground as this video, because he's not really going over the debate stuff, but he's talking about what's going to be in his next video. I haven't watched these because they're, half-hour long videos, and I'm just like, all right, here's a bunch of talking points from the things from the Chud, and we'll watch and do it live. I do have one really big one on voter fraud and rigging elections and stuff from Sinatra Says that we're going to do later. And do a more deep dive debunk. So these here are just, I'm going to do one big long one up to YouTube and then cut them and put like the start times for each Chud that we're responding to.
And we are asking why Biden refuses to. And then he responded with, Biden was weak and of course his position. 100 days of riots, says Chris Wallace. About time. Chris Wallace said there have been 100 days of riots. That's what he said. Riots, not protests. The American people know this. Now you've got Trump's base. They're all high-fiving. Woo, Trump won, yeah. They're highlighting some points where he could have done better. You got the anti-Trump base going, oh, Biden crushed it, woo. And then in reality, it's like, look, I don't know why the betting odds are flipping in Biden's favor, but I'd say money talks and BS walks. That and keeping that in mind.
Show the polls, Tim. Show all the polls. Show the polls, right? If you want to talk about what the initial thought was. Now, largely who won or not is irrelevant, the thing, because presidential debates have a marginal effect at best on who's going to vote in, and Biden's well outside the margin of error right now, and it has been consistently through the whole time that, even if Trump won, a 1 point drop in Biden's national average isn't going to do anything, right? is it going to affect him here based on previous data and study presidential debates?
I believe Hillary Clinton was favored in the betting odds. So take it with a grain of salt. I don't know what it really means. But I'll tell
So I don't know if you guys have watched Pim enough, going over time and stuff. He'll usually run to the betting odds because the betting odds for most of this election cycle have favored Trump winning. Right? So he'll always tout the betting odds. And as soon as the betting odds go against him, it's like, well, I'll take that with a grain of salt. You know, the betting odds thought Clinton was going to win. So I don't even think that. It's like, you know, the fact that people want to call him an objective journalist and his shitty punditry. Kill me. Jeez Louise.
tell you what I've been told by my friends and my family and, you know, people I know and trust. The riots flipped them. They were Democrat. They hated Trump. Many of them were abstaining because they hate Biden. And then,
see, this is all bullshit. This is for the atheist viewers who are familiar with the Kent Hovind. This is Kent Hovind saying, well, I was on an airplane and I asked this professor in biology who thinks evolution is real, and asked him, well, how'd you get that from a rock? Or some silly thing that he makes up. That's complete made up. It's like, and this well-known professor in evolution and biology and stuff said, you got a point. It's like, things that didn't happen for 100. Yeah, there's betting markets that do this. They're really bad, like based on the analysis and stuff here that I've seen of the betting markets. It's like they're really stupid. They're really bad. Like they don't really reflect reality at all on what's actually going on. But people put so much stock in it. See, a lot of people don't understand betting markets to begin with, right? Like the people that are setting the odds, they don't want to lose money, right? And so the odds that they give here, and I know this from like sports betting, are so that they create demand on one side to vote, and they balance it on the other side. So one side everybody's jumping on the odds at this point, you know, it's just over the top. They'll adjust the odds to get more people to jump over on the other side and make bets, so that whatever happens, they don't lose money, right? They may, you know, like lose the house and lose a ton of money and stuff there. They might lose a little. But largely they're coming away with money at the end of this, no matter who wins on the betting odds. So that like the high praise on like betting markets and stuff like this is just silly.
and when the riots happened and they would not stop, and the Democratic mayors and governors would not take Trump's offer for help, they said, enough. Trump needs to come in and clean this up. Maybe the Insurrection Act, I don't know. But I want to show you this. Adam Serwer says, just like after Charlottesville, the white nationalists are taking Trump's remarks as an endorsement of their behavior. Shut up. No, they aren't. Okay, the white nationalists are not. Richard.
They are too. Oh, he's going to go and say Richard Spencer. Richard Spencer's not taking any of that. Saying Richard Spencer supports Biden. Which is going to be like, that's such a disingenuous point, but we'll get here. But the Proud Boys, oh yeah. I mean, they're basically saying, yeah, Trump wants us to go fuck up some protesters and stuff now. Boys, he's on our side. They're printing out t-shirts and stuff there, right? Like,
Richard Spencer endorsed Joe Biden, calling him clearly more competent. And they'll try and claim that when the Klan or these white.
But I love that. Oh, Richard Spencer supported that here. And so like, well, hey, David Duke just supports Trump. Well, it doesn't matter that David Duke supports Trump. We're not going to do this. Richard Spencer supports Biden. Well, I mean, Richard Spencer got burned pretty bad by Trump's incompetence for the large part and a lot of stuff, right? So he might switch over to the other side and say, fuck the guy that fucked him, that he bet everything on, and not bringing his alt-right utopia forward, right? Not that Joe Biden's going to bring forward the alt-right utopia. That's just a silly notion, right? But my guess, and if I haven't looked at anything other than that I know that Richard Spencer made the endorsement. My guess, the logic, the train of thought is that everybody's openly against like white supremacists now, like, or largely most people, Republicans, conservatives obviously aren't. You know, they're still going to support all that other stuff, but that's a very untenable position to argue from, right? To argue for support, to gain all this other stuff that Spencer wants. Whereas you get Joe Biden in a return to normalcy. His mind, ideally, he can promote, advocate, recruit, do all that other stuff that he did well under Obama and through the election up till Trump. But after Trump, business hasn't been good for his side because most of Americans are against his side now, right? It's making the future ethno state that he wants an impossibility in his mind. Right. So to me, that would be like the train of thought, but I haven't looked at anything else he said. I just saw any stuff there. Or maybe he's trying to rehabilitate his image, but I don't think so. But I mean, this is like Sargon going on, like Richard Spencer advocated for universal health care for white people, and therefore Richard Spencer's a progressive. He wants to tar. Sargon's tried that one, yeah. Yeah, so a lot of those things, right? So you're referring to the holding centers and stuff there. Yes, several of those were built and put there, but the rules and stuff guarding them and holding there, weren't the same things, right? They were temporary facilities and stuff there, and that's all they were meant to be. Right? Now, obviously with that being at the forefront really hard and Trump being a real big talking point, you hope that Biden would get rid of them, right? But yeah, there's still going to be plenty of bad things that Biden does, right? Just simply maintaining the American empire, right? At some point, us on the left would want to get rid of it. I don't know what the question mark is. I think they're talking about, because didn't they set up the some of the holding cells, but they were meant to be temporary for moving and deportations that are now the kids and cell stuff. Maddie would know this better than me. You can correct me in chat. But I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of bad stuff Biden's going to do that's in maintaining the American empire that we're not going to like, but largely he's going to be a force for progressive change, or at least steps towards more progressive change in the future.
White supremacists or white nationalists endorse Democrats. It's just a trick because we know they actually like Trump better. Why? Trump's banning critical race theory. He's banning things that many white nationalists have praised. Yeah, don't believe me? Think about it for 2 seconds. Critical race theory, which Donald Trump answered very poorly when he was asked about it, says that whiteness is bad.
So they're not constant, so the situation down there is not concentration camps, right? Like, so dealing with illegal immigration, they were just temporary things for facility and processing reasons, and that was about it. They're in and out. There wasn't the situation that we have now under Trump. Now, do I want those things around in general and to begin with? No, but to come out and call that, oh, they set up these concentration camps, right? And they're the concentration camps begin, anywhere in the same sense that they're being treated under the Trump administration just isn't an accurate way to talk about those things. I mean, what do you think getting arrested for, like if you get processed and you're held in like overnight for like a drunk tank or something like that, right? Is that a concentration camp now? Right? If you get put in the drunk tank at the local police precinct overnight and then get processed and moved out to something where it's some temporary, Oh. Like I said, they're not the best things here, but they're not there. Oh yeah, Biden built them, yeah.
Believe that working hard and saving for the future is a white characteristic. That's why white nationalists, and I'm not going to pretend like I know what they all think, but many of them have said this is great. They love it. It's probably why.
All right, that is. Oh shit! What did I click? I clicked the wrong thing. All right. How do I do that? Click on his name. What do I do? That work. How do I get out of this thing? Nope, it just keeps bringing me over to his stuff. How do I close that then? That'll work. All right, that worked. Now, how do I close? I don't know how to close that in my chat. Let me refresh my dashboard. Yeah, there you go. Through 1350 stuff in my chat.
Someone like Richard Spencer would
But like, critical race theory is so misunderstood by these fucking people, and they do it for a reason. It is really there. And I don't have the expertise in critical race theory to go through everything on it there, but largely like the spending and saving thing, what's largely coming from that idea, like Tim is not probably reporting it right, is dealing with things like privilege and generational wealth and stuff like that that African Americans generally do not have access to. And that's so, talking about like the privilege of certain things. And that's largely what the argument is likely to be that Tim's just presenting. Well, they think saving is a white thing, and that's something white supremacists would agree with. Yeah, I should. I think he's done. I think I've seen a few clips of that going around, but I haven't watched the whole thing.
Endorse Joe Biden. The dude isn't lying to you. This is the crazy thing. They want to act like when Richard Spencer supports Joe Biden, it must be a secret trick because he's just trying to smear Joe Biden. It's like the dude is publicly comfortable with telling you he's a white nationalist. He's not lying to you. He's giving his opinions in real time. Take his word for it. If you don't like his opinions, that's fine. But stop pretending like it's all a ruse or a trick. As far as I can tell, the dude's being completely honest with what he thinks. And I do not like his political views, and a lot of people don't. But his views align with leftist identitarianism. Not completely, but for the most part, they're
No, it doesn't. Like, this is the stupid false equivalence and stuff like there, right? When we look and say, hey, this group, black people are facing this or something like that. And if we get bigger into how they misunderstand intersectionality, intersectionality is a really simple tool to understand and how we're looking here, right? So you can belong into group A, B, or C, and then there's groups 1, 2, 3, say, for whatever there, right? So if you make a policy, you say, oh, well, hey, group A suffers this more, right, than any other thing. Let's try to alleviate that. And so we enact a policy to fix things for group A, and then we look and say, well, the people that belong in group A and group 1 for whatever, so the 1A, that little section overlap in the Venn diagram, are still facing undue, unjust, systemically unfair situations that we should correct, right? And so that's what all intersectionality does, is say, well, hey, we're missing this part. So the thing that was enacted to help group A isn't helping everybody in group A, because the people that belong in group A and group 1 aren't seeing that benefit, right? And so largely this isn't there. So they're like, oh, yeah, identity politics, all you care about is what the race is and all this other stuff. It's like, well, largely we care about that is because society and these systems were put in place against those groups, right? So it wasn't that those groups are like, hey, we're going to fight for, civil rights as African Americans, or we're going to fight for suffrage as women, or we're going to fight for gay marriage as the gay group, right? And stuff like that. It's like society said we're not going to do that, and we're going to put these things in place and say, hey, you don't get those. Or in some cases, like, honestly, like if we're talking, I'll talk about like the LGBT stuff, because I was in high school when the Supreme Court finally declared anti-sodomy laws unconstitutional. There's still, 7 states, maybe a bit more than that had anti-sodomy laws. So you for being gay, you could be taken to jail, right? That was 2003. That was only 17 years ago, right? Right. That's largely, it's like, oh, they're identitarians. All you care about is race and all this other stuff. It's like, well, I mean, there's shit that's affecting people based on these categories that, hey, maybe we should fix.
Theories on race. Take a look at what we get from when you search this. On Google search, the New York Times, Trump refuses to condemn white supremacists.
Oh,
New
he's
York
going to
Times
bring up the
again, Trump
transcript.
refuses to denounce white supremacy. Blah, blah. Proud Boys, Trump refuses to condemn. Chris Wallace, are you willing? Blah, blah, blah. And there you go, over and over and over again. Trump won't do it. Trump won't, blah, blah, blah. I'd like to introduce you to Enrique Tarrio and Joe Biggs. Look at this. Look at this guy right here with skull and, what is that, a skull and crossbones? Look at his face. I can tell by him shaking the hand of a guy who is not white. He clearly is a white supremacist. And I can tell but
This is, I have a black friend. I have a gay friend. Therefore, I can't be racist. I can't be homophobic, right? This is all this is. And like I said, people in a group that faces these things can still help and enforce those things on them, right? Everything from black and Jewish Nazis to, God, there's examples all over the place that more people would be familiar with. But like, to pretend that this isn't, can't be racist against yourself. It's like, you very well can be. The one I found out, was watching a Destiny reacting to this music theory one. I was talking about like the white supremacy baked into music theory, and they were talking about was it Heinrich Schenker, I think, was who developed how we teach modern music theory and stuff in the early 1900s, who was a Jewish person, but who was a German supremacist, who was highly anti-Semitic, was very racist, all these other things. And so the white supremacy was just baked into it, so long ago that when people study and look at like music history and learn music history today, and they learn the Schenker method, they're learning something that's very white supremacist in nature, but maybe the people teaching it are just, perfectly fine, normal people. And that's largely how those system problems work. Yep, Blair White being transphobic, yep.
I can tell the Proud Boys certainly must be white supremacists because their leader is not white. What is this? A Dave Chappelle sketch? You can criticize the Proud Boys for being Western chauvinist. You can say they're provocateurs. You can say that they march around because they're looking for a fight. You can criticize.
That Dave Chappelle sketch has truth to it, right? That's part of the joke, right? This is not understanding comedy. That's part of the joke, is that there are people that can do it. Like Daryl Davis, right? I've seen Pim Tool bring up Daryl Davis before. Daryl Davis, from the research I've done, is largely a propaganda piece, right? Like his self-promotion about his efforts, right? So if you're not familiar, Daryl Davis is the guy who claimed to have gotten 200 people out of neo-Nazi, white supremacist, Klan groups, etc. And when you dug into it, those claims are highly suspect. But and then one of the other things you bring out is one such group granted him a friend, like an honorary friend of this group, right? An honorary Aryan, if you will, to this group, because he would come up and he'd defend those people. He'd be a witness to defend that. Oh, these people aren't racist. These aren't this. They're going to come their way. They're changing. All this other stuff, while they openly are racist and they don't give a fuck about them, right? He's their shield, right? So people will bring that in to deflect those criticisms, those accusations, those facts, all that stuff. It's really silly.
Criticize them in all these ways. We'll have an argument about it, okay? Because it's not clear cut. Now, I don't think the Proud Boys start fights for the most part. There have been some instances, but it's usually only when Antifa shows up to their events. And that's the thing. Proud Boys will be like, we're going to go do our thing. Now, are there Proud Boys?
So this is largely a lie, right?
Who do this knowing? Oh, yeah. Because they used to actually have something, I think it was called the fourth degree, like you get a degree or whatever in the Proud Boys. And it was getting into a fight in defense of Western values. And so they was quite literally saying, like, if you get into a fight with, Antifa or whatever.
So he's saying that they have a whole degree of where be violent against these people. He's like, oh, they don't start the violence. It's only Antifa that starts the violence. It's like, kind of contradicted yourself right there, Tim.
Then you get upgraded or something like that. So there really was a component of the Proud Boys that involved violence. You can criticize them for it, 100%. We can talk about it. But what you're not going to convince me of is that a bunch of dudes are secret white supremacists taking their cues from a guy who's clearly not white. But that's everything. There you go. Let's talk about the transcript. Emily Jashinsky tweeted, the debate was garbage, but this is the actual transcript of the white supremacy exchange. Trump didn't refuse to denounce white supremacy as much as the media is now saying. Look at his first reply. Take issue with how he handled it, but don't misinform. Wallace said, are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups? Sure. Trump said, sure. And to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities we saw in Kenosha, as we've seen in Portland. Sure, I'm prepared to do it. But I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not the right wing. I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace. Then do it, sir. Do it. Say it, says Biden. What do you want to call them? Give me a name. White supremacists and right-wing militias. Biden yells Proud Boys. Trump says Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what, someone's got to do something about Antifa and the left. Trump fell into the same trap.
Yeah, he's fairly white passing. It's not as obvious and stuff there, right?
Biden did on Antifa. The only problem, there's no Proud Boys.
So, but he didn't denounce the white supremacist and right-wing militias here, right? He says, will you be willing to do it, right? And then when given the opportunity to do it, then do it, sir, do it. And he didn't. And then in the Proud Boys is stand back and stand by. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa, right? So do they not understand how the language works, how words work?
Boys marching around in my neighborhood. In fact, if the Proud Boys came to my neighborhood, I'd be like, oh, look, Proud Boys. I have zero concern, and most Americans probably have zero concern that Proud Boys are going to be marching around, smashing windows, starting fires, and attacking people. But Antifa's, the videos are everywhere. I get people calling me saying, like, what's happening with these riots? They're scared. I get people who tell me from Chicago, they've been Democrats their whole lives, and then the black bloc Antifa and the rioters went into their neighborhood and they were freaking out. And
again, whether or not people do this is a thing, but I largely don't think Tim, like the stories he's telling, is true. Whether or not there are people that are fearful of that is necessarily true, but it's like most of the people that seem to say a lot of shit about this stuff is people that are nowhere near this stuff, right? It's a lot of this fear mongering is towards this idealized white suburban voter, right? And largely, I'll say here, I don't like the looting, the property destruction, the violence, and all that stuff, right? So I'm a liberal, right? So those are things I'm against, right? But a lot of things in when these things go on and like the riots are the voice of the unheard kind of thing, right? Eventually it's just going to start spilling over into things that aren't there. It's going to be hard to control. It's one of the issues with like accelerationism, right? As a belief too. Beyond that, it's like, well, we'll just let things get worse, and then we'll get what we want, and that might happen, right? You might get enough people that that are unheard, that's rise up. You get like French Revolution kind of thing here, but at the same time, you can turn around and end up with fascism, right? The exact opposite you want, either through the leaders as is, or when the people rise up. Think of like the 1979 Iranian Revolution, right? That was largely a secular uprising to begin with, but ultimately by the end, the Ayatollahs were in power, right? And so wanting those things and setting those things loose, there's a chance you're not getting what you want and you're going to get the exact opposite in those things. So I would prefer they don't do it at all, but I also understand that some of these things are just going to spill over and do as is, and we got to manage around it, right? And like I said, right now, given the polling, it's like the majority of Americans think Trump is exacerbating the situation with how he's handling it. Whereas Biden's words, they say, hey, he's doing a good job, right? Like, because all along the time, Biden has condemned the violence, right? Consistently, right? So much so that I saw Thought Slime on a Surf's Times video talking with, I think you might have been watching a Pim Tool video about it, and he's like, yeah, well, it's like, that's not the case. Biden wants to put me in jail because I'm an anarchist. It's like, that's not what he was talking about. Anarchism is a polysemous word. There's multiple things, right? As much as anarchists don't like to acknowledge that, they think it's only there. But you got Thought Slime saying, oh, I'll be thrown in jail under Biden because I'm an anarchist. It's like you're not out there doing any of the violence, any of that stuff. Joe Biden's not going to put you in jail, kind of things. But like people know what Biden has been saying.
And the left likes to say, Tim's making this up. No one really said that. Oh, please, man. Nah. You want to play games and pretend like America isn't freaked out by 100 plus days of rioting? Chris Wallace said it in the debate. 100 days of rioting. And a bunch of leftists got triggered. They're like, they're not riots. I was in Portland. They're not riots. Oh, okay, all the fires you're starting, blah, blah, blah. Don't care. I don't care what you...
I mean, they've done the studies on this stuff, right? Like it's 94% of all the reported protests and things like that don't devolve into any of the riot stuff, right? They're peaceful. That's gone around, and they mocked people like what's her name? Lauren Chen. We're mocking that. Oh, that's not true. It's like, oh, it's like here's a little protest of 3 people here, and they further research shows that largely the rioting, looting stuff is usually concerned to like really small portions of the city, and they don't get out beyond that in most of the cases, right? So it's not this as big of a thing as they want to push it. Should read some more theory, man. I've read theory. I've read several bit of theories. There's probably more I got to read. Like I haven't read everything, but I've certainly read. Especially in my side of the thing, in the liberal sphere and stuff. There, I've read a lot of that from Locke to Paine to Adam Smith and stuff. There, I've read a little bit of Marx and Engels, and that's largely why I laugh at like Vosh, whose promotion of the market socialism that he wants is something that Marx and for somebody to cite Marx as much as Vosh does, or Lenin and any of that stuff, that market socialism that Vosh advocates for is not socialism in their view, right? And it's largely where you get like the destinies, like, well, you can have worker co-ops and capitalism and just be like that. Yeah, that was Marx and Engels' criticism of it. But yeah.
You think Joe Biden needed to call it out. He did not do it. Now, Donald Trump made a big mistake. Joe Biden says to Trump, all these dog whistles and racism.
And I've also read a lot of other theory on like the right-wing stuff. They're like, I used to be pretty heavy as a libertarian at one point, coming out of high school. So I've read, a lot of libertarian stuff. Then I moved over to like the liberal stuff, like the Milton Friedman. I've read plenty of his work. So there's some policies that Milton Friedman has advocated for that I agree with, right? There's policies across there, right? I just don't think much of my concern is the same concern with a lot of like the price, what was called the price discussion in the early 20th century largely amongst the socialists, right? And so if we get rid of all these things that are part of capitalism and stuff here, how do we replace and get those things around and make it work, right? And so they'd be like the Austrians, the Austrian schools, the Mises and the Hayeks, who said, yeah, it just can't be done. And then there's other proposals put forward. Like I said, I'm always open to reading more stuff, but largely, yeah, it's a matter of time.
Don't work. I don't know, whatever. Donald Trump was asked about critical race theory, okay? And instead of Chris Wallace really just mangled this. It was awful. He said, you banned racial sensitivity training. And Trump walked right into this. Trump was ill-prepared. And I got really disappointed. This is the arrogance in me, but I'm really confident I would have absolutely...
I mean, that's what he banned, was racial sensitivity training. Any anarchist stuff? I'm nothing as big as deep. Like I've read a bit of Conquest of Red and some other stuff, but yeah, I'm not as a deep dive onto that. But like the whole thing in like anarchism is in terms of like I think what brought this up in the Read More theory was the thing that, hey, anarchism is more than just like the political theory stuff, and there it's a polysemous word that means multiple things, and it is true. Like the original word that it came from, like if you follow this is kind of the debates and arguments I get in with my fellow atheists, online about the definition of atheism and all these other things. They like to hold, well, A means not and theist, so you're not a theist. So that all you have to be is an atheist and not believe in theism. And it's like, well, no, that's not how you do proper etymology, right? And so, like, the term anarchism existed before the political theory of anarchism, right? It comes from the Greek anarchia, which what is it? Archon is the king or the ruler kind of thing, and so anarchia is without the ruler and stuff. And it would refer to, was it the Athenians or was it the Spartans? There was a thing where there was 32 leaders put in for about 6 months, and that was considered the anarchia, and that's the first use of the word, and that's the word that anarchism comes out of. And so anarchism itself was used well before Proudhon, and that used there to mean largely what we think of when we think of anarchy, in the sense it's not the political theory, which is just chaos, lawlessness, and all that other stuff. Oh, that's because I said as a liberal? Yeah. Like I said, I'm open to reading more theory. I've read a lot of different stuff. I think I feel pretty... But yeah, like it's all the stuff I can choose. Like, honestly, when I go online and stuff and take like the political compass or the 8 values test, they come and say I'm like some radical far left socialist. And I'm like, but these things can exist in capitalism, right? Just fine in the theories. And plenty of other capitalist theories, liberal theories, and stuff like that. So how am I this far left a socialist? Right, so it's really weird, right?
Obliterated Joe Biden in that debate, 100%. Critical race theory, because all those questions Chris Wallace had to ask, I can give you an answer right off the top of my head, okay? And look, I'll tell you what, I don't debate, okay? I don't. I have discussions, but I can give you answers. I rant all day for a living, no script. No, Chris Wallace, Donald Trump did not ban racial sensitivity training.
Oh, no, it doesn't, but that other usage of anarchism remained in use alongside the rise of the political philosophy of anarchism, right? That's why anarchists took on libertarian instead, was because of that usage of the word continued, right? So it's not that usage of the word ever went out of favor. It was there. It was always there. I mean, it's not like that usage has been consistent over time, right? Now, it's also been used when people consider themselves anarchists, as in no leaders and stuff like that, no hierarchies, and was certainly used against it there. But no, the anarchism that way had continued to use that way through the 19th century, even with the rise of anarchist philosophy.
Donald Trump banned critical race theory. That's the theory that believes hard work is an element of white people. Do you believe that, Chris Wallace? I don't think so. Now, do you think?
So again, the hard work thing in this here and the critical race theory and what they're largely through is the language, right? The pull yourselves up by the bootstraps, all this other stuff. Just work hard and you're going to get through it. And it's like, well, no, there's all these other systems that are in place, all these other obstacles thrown in front of us that just saying work hard isn't going to get us over, right? And that's largely where I would, without seeing the specific statement and the specific person that said it, that's largely going to be, in general, going to be where that comes from. No. Nope, I'm not implying that at all. Nope, I said anarchism is polysemic, which means it has multiple definitions, right? So anarchists, the self-described anarchists, are explaining typically, for the most part, anarchist theory, anarchist philosophy and stuff right there. And that's what they mean, right? But we can say it's anarchy or it's anarchism and stuff there. The phrase, the chaos or stuff there in common usage is still the same way we use it, right? It's still one of the ways. I should be more clear. One of the ways we still use it, right? And so when and I bring it up, and there's the Biden, the anarchists and the arsons and all that other stuff, and paired together in context of that statement, Biden isn't talking about people that adhere to anarchist philosophy. He's talking about just the lawlessness kind of stuff, and to a roundabout way, that's we're so Thought Slime, who's an anarchist, takes well, just anytime anarchist is referenced, it means somebody who adheres to the anarchist political philosophy, and that's not what Biden was saying, right? So it's silly of him to say that Biden wants to arrest him just because he adheres to this political theory. Yeah. So it's polysemous words, multiple different. A lot of words have multiple definitions, and it depends on how you use them, right? And whether what you mean.
The government should be paying people to teach people.
But back to the critical race theory stuff, it's like, yeah, there's these obstacles. Oh, just work hard and you get through it. Oh, yeah, working hard is going to get me past redlining, is going to get me past racial discrimination in there and all that other stuff. These things are in the way that going to have here. And so it's a white person or a privileged thing that just work hard and you're going to be fine, right? Because you don't have, as a white person, you don't have those barriers in place to go where you want to go, right? Generally speaking, you might be, and this is where intersectionality comes in, you might have another category that you're in that you have it there. So you might be a gay, an LGBT member, right? In there, being white, for being white, you're not going to have those barriers, but for being a member of the LGBT community, you'd have those barriers, right? And so that's all the hard work thing is largely what's being met.
People that? I didn't think so either. Therefore, we said no to this. Trump didn't have a good answer. He pattered. He was like, it was really bad. It was really racist. And they were teaching people that America was bad. Trump should have been better prepared. If Trump made the move to ban critical race theory, which I think was a fantastic move, he should have been better prepared for what it entails. And the simple thing is, critical race theory says working hard and preparing for the future is a trait of white people. I am not exaggerating or making that up. That's literally a component. Ibram X. Kendi dragging Amy Coney Barrett just the other day because she was trying to civilize, these poor kids she adopted because they weren't white. That's what they think.
So, no. So if you read that and just take the first tweet, that Ibrahim tweet, that's something that some white people do that are there, right? And in the tweet, in his follow-up tweet, he said, that's not what I'm saying here necessarily of an individual, right? That's conflating like a systemic thing. Like, so if you think the systems around policing, right, are systemically racist, systemically all that other stuff, that doesn't necessarily mean that the any individual one you point to is necessarily a racist person, right? In the other sense of the word kind of thing, right? I think it's optics-wise, it's a pretty poor tweet to send out in the first place because it gets used by these shitheads to turn everything else on the ideology that looks bad. And largely, this is the large part that got me out of like the anti-SJW stuff was actually reading more of this stuff, following along, learning more about this stuff, and like the anti-SJW just being completely clueless on a lot of this stuff. It's like, but I mean, even then, when I was an anti-SJW Chud kind of guy in there, I was around for Gamergate and stuff. Like, there's things that Nita Sarkeesian said that, and the way she does her videos that are like cringe in the first part. But then there's other stuff you'd see, and it's like, oh, hey, you can have all these different body sizes and shapes for men, but women, it's all the same. Can we have the same for women characters? And it's like, all right, that's perfectly reasonable request. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And so even as an anti-SJW, it's like part of here. But so part of that opening there was allowing me to pull me away from that stuff.
They think hard work. It's exactly what white supremacists think. Trump could have been better.
That's not what white supremacists think, right? White supremacists think that white people are inherently superior, right? Not that hard work's necessarily a trait of that.
Absolutely better prepared for this. Frank Luntz made a good point. Or I shouldn't say he made a good point, but he said, my undecided group just finds this debate funny. I've honestly not laughed this hard in months. They don't mean that in a good way. This ugliness isn't working for either of the candidates. I mean, I disagree.
Where's this Frank Luntz?
They may not mean it in a good way, but people don't remember what you say, but they do remember how you made them feel. And I was laughing last night. It was exactly what I hoped for. It could have been better, but Trump was funny. When Trump started going, wrong, I just lost it. I love it. Wrong. Trump dominates the stage. He took over in every way. Now, is that going to make undecided voters want to vote for him? Probably not. And that's bad news for Trump. But to say that Joe Biden won the debate is wrong. Joe Biden was shaken. He was like, Trump owned it. Like Frank Luntz had already said. So here's another tweet. It says, this debate has actually convinced some undecided voters not to vote at all. I've never seen a debate cause this reaction. I'm not surprised.
So, again, all the polling said that Biden won, right? Like, all the initial polling afterwards. We'll see. Like I said, ultimately, I don't think it has any effect on the actual polls and the voting stuff there, just because historically it marginal at best.
Man, we'll see how things play out. I got to tell you, though, I'm not convinced Trump's going to win off this debate performance, but we still got several more debates, and I'm not entirely convinced Trump is going to win, straight up. Now, I don't know for sure. It's all speculative. But I wonder if Biden's weakness really will translate. Because, Frank is mentioning that some undecided voters won't vote at all. But I wonder how many undecided voters are looking at Biden and Trump and going, I'll take the guy who's a jerk, man, I guess. So that's what I tweeted last night. I said, which one are you picking? Senile crackpot crony or a-hole loudmouth TV star? And of course, I guess for the people who follow me, 110,000 votes and 92% said, a-hole loudmouth. Listen, it could just be because of the followers I have, which is probably the case, but 100,000 votes, a lot of retweets. It's probably all the Trump supporters who are active. That could be that they're more enthusiastic. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win.
No, your Twitter poll has nothing to draw from, Tim, right? There's nothing to draw out of that at all.
But enthusiasm does matter in terms of turnout. So we will see. People aren't enthusiastic about voting for Biden, but they are enthusiastic about voting against Donald Trump. But I'll tell you what I think. I'm disappointed in a lot of Trump's answers, but I'll tell you what, man. Joe Biden is a senile crackpot crony. And I'm not saying that literally. I'm saying in the perception of him. I'm not trying to do an armchair diagnosis. I'm saying he represents the establishment. He's clearly not capable for the job. He's weak. He's a coward. I'll take the a-hole dude. I'll take the guy who's yelling on stage, because at least when he goes to negotiate and debate with other countries and corporations, he's going to do the same thing. I'll take what I can get. But let me...
What do you think you're getting, though, if he does the same thing he did last night with anything there? Like, I don't know. That's really weird. I don't think there's going to be anything left here in this video. We get some polling averages. So let's see his analysis of the polls.
Let me tell you where Donald Trump actually absolutely did win. First, Joe Biden made a mistake. Frank Lunt said Biden should not have told Trump to shut up. Trump has rattled him, and it's not a good look for Biden. Here's Vulture. Will You Shut Up, Man is the song of the summer. Why would I want to vote for someone who's like Donald Trump but worse? Okay, Donald Trump's character problems are a detriment to him in many ways. I don't like it when Donald Trump says stupid things and yells at people and insults them. I don't. That's just me. Sometimes it's funny, but sometimes I'm like, just come on, man. Right? Like Joe Biden, come on, man. But then Joe Biden goes up there and does the exact same thing. Joe, you're not as good at you're not good at this. You're like trying to be like Trump, but you're bad at it. Okay, fine. I'll take the guy who's at least good at it. He should not have told Trump to shut up. Trump was dominating the debate stage, and Biden had an opportunity to play to decorum. He didn't want to do it. Joe Biden thought he was going to beat Trump at his own game. Are you daft, dude?
I was telling the guy who constantly interrupts, overtalks you, shuts you down, to shut up, playing Trump's game. Someone want to explain that to me? I don't know how Tim's brain works at this at all, like even remotely. Like, I don't know how you. What is the logical train of thought that gets you to that conclusion? 'Cause I can't figure it out.
You can't beat Trump at this. But listen, here's where he really won. From Reason, Robbie Suave writes, Donald Trump says Joe Biden is the candidate of perpetual lockdowns. Though the presidential debate was pure chaos, Trump destroyed Biden on the question of reopening the economy. Hands down, no question asked. That is a fact. Joe Biden had no answer, no response. And Trump said, when they tried going after Trump on COVID deaths, Trump was like, and what about the VA, the 380,000? And it was like, whoa. Trump had a fast answer. He knew they were going to bring it up. And he said, if you were in charge, you opposed what we were doing, it'd be millions. What's your response, Joe Biden? Lockdowns? More lockdowns? Trump.
So, no, your response to... Oh, God, that one, the 2 million death thing was, way like worst case scenario projection. But Biden didn't oppose when Trump did at least some of the stuff right there. He opposed the things that he didn't do, right? And didn't go further on. Like, it's ridiculous. It's all that, oh, I shut travel down to China in January. Yeah, he did nothing else until mid-March, right? Nothing else. And largely from some studies and stuff, most of the infections and stuff came over from Europe, well before the European travel ban. You had no contact tracing in place. You said, was it near the end of February, beginning of March, we have 15 cases. Soon that's going to be down to 0. Even though early in February, you're talking about how it was 5 times more deadly than the flu, to Bob Woodward, right? So, like, the way he handled it is just fucking bad. Like, beyond belief, bad. Now, even if he handled it perfectly, would that have done enough to save everybody? I don't know, but it should have been better than the 200,000 deaths, and right now the current projection is over 400,000 deaths by the first of the year. So by about election time, we'll be talking, probably, 300,000 dead, right? At that point, at least. And with the way Trump's pushing to open up, we may be 400,000 dead by that point, by the time election day rolls around. Right? So it's just going to get worse when the flu and respiratory diseases hit their seasons, right? With this year.
Trump said we can't do that. People are suffering. And people want to know what they're going to do with their jobs. That was an absolute win for Trump.
Now, it isn't, because you know what the Democrats want to do? Is they want to provide stimulus during the times and stuff there, right? To help keep the businesses, to keep the people, up and running, or not necessarily up and running, but to hold them over until they can open back up and do these other things, right? So there's the $3 trillion or $3.5 trillion Heroes Act sitting on the Senate desk that nothing's been done with since May, right? And so the eviction crisis that we're facing right now, all the other crises and stuff that we're facing because the first stimulus ended, is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And the economy is in a pretty rough shape right now to get really fucked over.
Now, as to whether this actually translates to victory, I'm not convinced. But I'll tell you what, if you think it will, then go out and place your bets. I mean that figuratively. There are betting odds. To what capacity it's legal, go to these sites and do whatever you want to do. But right now, they're all saying Joe Biden's favored. You know what that means? So following this debate, we saw what looks like a plus 16 from 9.5 to plus 16. Okay, that means you have an opportunity to make a lot of money if you think Trump's going to lose. If you think Trump's going to win. If they're all saying in the betting odds that Biden's on track to win and the betting odds favor Joe Biden, vote for Trump. Bet on Trump. I remember a lot of people back in 2016 said the odds were so bad for Trump that they put down like $100, won $1,000. They were like, I don't know, whatever. The idea was we don't know. It's not a roll of the dice like a roulette, not roulette, like craps or a spin of the wheel like roulette. It's politics and gambling. Everybody thinks they know. You're speculating on who's going to win. People basically said, I'm fine with losing the 100. I'd be stoked if I won 1,000. And if they're saying Trump wins.
So this is just the betting averages back here, right? So this is dumb. Don't look at the actual polls in the RCP average. Don't do any of that. Let's bring those up. Let's look at those. And those have been pretty consistent. Like, all of 2020. Right? This has probably been the most boring election in terms of poll watching ever. Right? 49.7, almost 50% in the polling average already. Like, and about, what was, Trump won with 46% last time, didn't he? Or 40? 2016. Final. What do we got? Yeah, 46-1 to 48-2, right? So Biden, the average right now is up about 2 points over where, or a point and a half over where Clinton finished nationally already. So there's that one. I don't know if this is going to be a... Oh, what the hell is going on?
With only a few words, Joe Biden
Yeah, this is going to be what we did in the middle part of this, so we're going to move on. All right, we're going to deal with the quartering, or as he does on his Midwestly channel. So this is the next one we're going to do. Short one, short and sweet, but let's see what Jeremy has to say, what great political insight he has. He doesn't know, like, this is his second channel most people don't know about. Most people, when they respond to Jeremy, respond to his main account. So let's see his hot political takes.
What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from Midwestly, and I'm going to have just one video today. I'm a little under the weather. Been battling with the flu, and I need to take a little nappy poo, I think, today. The debates last night, largely disappointment for me. I think it went about as expected, but I had hoped Trump would use a little more tact. I don't think that he lost the debate, but I think he barely won it. And against Joe Biden, that's basically a Biden win.
So I'm curious what he was expecting, or what he thought more tact was going to come from Trump. Like, Trump has no tact at all.
They tricked him. They got him on that do you disavow question. Even though he said, sure, yes, I disavow, it hasn't stopped Twitter from...
No, he didn't say, sure, yes, I disavow. No, you're adding that in there, Jeremy. Ooh, you're playing defense there. In the worst possible way.
I see. Oh, it's actually not number one pinned anymore. But for a while, it was just said, Trump refuses to disavow white supremacists. That's just a lie. He did say, yes, sure, of course I do.
No, that's not what he said. Try again. Wow, adding all the words in.
And anyway, imagine needing that. Imagine needing that. Like, what? Do you need your president to disavow that? It's like, Mr. President, do you disavow meanness? Because I need you to. Because I'm a baby. These are all trick questions.
They're not trick questions, right? This is something Trump has to answer for because they're a large part of Trump's base, right? Like, that's why these questions keep coming up, right? It's ridiculous.
Moderators sucked. The moderators always suck. It's an absolute garbage disaster that I think Trump still won. Although I don't think he won by as much as he needed to. I think we're seeing the reaction in Vegas in the betting lines. I think Trump's dropped in his likely to be reelected after the debate. And
why? Why is the betting markets with him all the time? Yeah, I think he's just saying in general the moderators always like. This is heavy cope from Jeremy. Right, so you gotta say, well, the moderators always suck. This always suck. There, this and all this other stuff. It's like, a little more substance than that, Jeremy.
And there's been a couple of takeaways you've seen here from the New York Times, for example. It was 90 minutes of chaos and a year of upheaval, but did it matter? No, I don't think it really did. President Trump and Joe.
I agree. As much as I would like it to matter, as much as I would like the big polls that said, hey, Biden won big to start reflecting. No, maybe they do. Maybe it comes along and it really starts reflecting in the polls that start coming out here the weeks to come, right? The result on that. But again, presidential debates largely do not move the needle historically, no matter how well someone does.
Joseph R. Biden Jr., somebody gets paid by the word, appeared on stage together for the first time, shouting interruptions and often incoherent crosstalk filled the air as Mr. Trump purposely and repeatedly heckled and blurted over his rival and the moderator alike in a 90-minute melee that showcased the president's sense of urgency to upend a race in which the polls show him trailing. I don't know if I'd agree with that. It depends which poll you are looking at. And again,
just take the polling average, Jeremy. The polling average has been pretty fucking consistent with a Biden winning nationally, right? Like, you don't have to say, well, we're gonna take the Trafalgar poll, or we're gonna take Rasmussen, which are very heavy Republican leaning ones that show the race a lot closer, and every now and then it'll show Trump up. Those are about the only poll. Or you take the one that is largely fake, or at least 538 thinks it's fake, which is the Democracy Institute from the UK, which 538 doesn't include them in their average. RCP might. I'll have to go back and I'll have to go and double check. But like 538 said, it's like, yeah, given their numbers and how they do it, it looks very much like they're just making their shit up as they go, right? And they're not actually polling or doing any kind of the work. So we'll see how right they were afterwards, if they get any legitimacy out of it. But that was one that said Trump's winning. Trump's up in like 7 of the swing states. And it's like, that is so incongruent with the rest of the polls, right?
I don't want to just whole hog dismiss the polls, but they were just all very wrong last year too. There were a couple of great zingers. I think there was something about where Biden was like, "Mah."
So the polls were not overly bad or wrong in 2016, right? This is the narrative they're going to hold on to over and over again, right? The average at the time was about 3.1 points for Hillary. She won by 2.3 nationally. A couple of the state ones weren't great and polled there in terms of polling, but largely the polls were solid and all right. And since then, they have made the adjustments that they think they need to make, and the polls were even more accurate in 2018, right, with these new adjustments. So with the new adjustments over 2016, Biden has still consistently shown a lead. Hey, how's it going, Marty? Doing up here. We're just going through some like Chud reactions to the debate last night. Just kind of going over there. I don't know if you saw it. It was a shit show. If you didn't watch it, it was basically YouTube, Twitch, politics debate. Which I like a shit show, right? Like, I'm not gonna lie, right? Jerry, that kind of stuff appeals to me. But it is a poor thing to have in a presidential election or any kind of political election, kind of stuff like that. Yeah.
My Trump rallies, and Trump got, well, nobody wants to go to them. Nobody's going to a Biden rally. I see like 4 or 5 people. Like, he had a couple of good zingers. Mr. Biden labored to get his points in over Mr. Trump's stream of interjections, turning directly to the camera for refuge from a scrum that hardly represented a contest of ideas. But Mr. Biden did not stumble, contradicting months of questions from Trump campaign about his mental fitness, and Mr. Trump seemed to do little to bring over voters who were not already part of his base. I think that's probably true of both sides. And I would need to see data that really proved that the debates in and of themselves do anything to move people over. I think probably the vice presidential debates might be a little more helpful. I think the early debates, when deciding on a candidate, probably does more to build support. But once you're locked in, I think most people are basically locked in. There's 6 takeaways. Trump trampled over everything. I'd say that's fine. I say Mr. Biden's own performance was mostly adequate. He swallowed some of his own lines, and Trump talked over others. Before the debate, Mr. Wallace said that if successful, his job was to be invisible as a person. He sometimes managed to recede, though other times he was caught up in the shout fest. Rarely did he exert control over the chaos. Why would it be so hard? You know, I would think that the moderator, is this crazy to say that, like, wouldn't you want the moderator to be able to cut their mic?
Yes, and I think that's going to be one of the changes going forward that the commission puts forward, right? Cut the mic. I thought they might have cut it for a minute there last night. I think there's one spot where Trump's lips were moving, looked like he was talking, and nothing was coming out over the mic. So I think maybe for a short second there, I don't know who cut it, where they cut it from, but I don't think Wallace had control of it. Yeah, he is. What's funny is he's stumbled onto at least some general points, right? Like, these presidential debates, you know, historically are marginal at best at changing who wins or anything else like that, right? Based on all past data, his stuff there where he said like the early debates between like in the primaries and stuff are more beneficial and effective. That shows in the data largely because you're largely on the same side, you know, as a Democrat and a Republican. So it's a kind of a change of like policy proposals and what you prefer over something else within the party, and those kind of things do have an effect. So he stumbled onto some things that are right, and like the cut in the mic, that's something they should have. Yeah, it's not a whole lot here. Like the first big chunk of this video is just a clip from Winter Soldier that his editor puts like Trump's face and Biden's face over, or Trump's face over Captain America and all that other stuff, and it goes for a bit. And then he's just reading the article. So there's not much here. We went through Sargon and Tim Pool's takes on what happened. Surprise, surprise, they both thought Trump won and won big in Sargon's case. But I mean, they're Trump's base already, right? They already like Trump, so they're going to do whatever they can say to say Trump won. You know, Quartering says he won by a little bit. You know, a little more... even though he says Trump won, like, and he's going to get into the win in the landslide hilariously, which is this is the video. We're over halfway through and we're not there yet, Jeremy. Get us there.
I think that would be pretty appropriate.
Jeremy, he is not. He's a big thing with Jeremy is he is the quintessential grifter on there. All right, like any of the opinions he holds on the Quartering channel, he holds provisionally. And so if you get into a place to challenge him, like the Big Joel discussion or the Destiny discussion, he'll walk back every single point he's ever made to somebody else. He's strictly in it for the money. He's strictly there to, especially on the Quartering channel, to regurgitate what his fans like, right? That's why he puts out every day. It's like, oh, I got 3 videos. I got 1 video already. I got 2 more spots open. What do you want to hear about? And his fans will link something in there, and he'll, 2 hours later, he'll have a video up on it, on a topic that he doesn't know anything about, hasn't followed anything there, will stuff in a whole bunch of his own theories that don't follow with what's being said. Yeah. And the Quartering hit it. It was actually on the Quartering's channel, which Quartering doesn't really stream typically when he goes on to these other discussions. But yeah, he kept it hidden. He wouldn't put it up after they're in there, because Biggest Joel is like, the mild manner, quiet kind of thing. Well, you consider this kind of thing, anything there. So he's not as confrontational as Destiny, where he can rub it off as Destiny being Destiny kind of stuff. And the Quartering walked everything back, like it was quaking in his boots. That's where the Quivering nickname came from, was those 2 discussions. I mean, I don't know if I'd go so far as say a white nationalist, but he is a he'll carry the water for Trump, like specifically is that he's a conservative grifter, right? He's, I'm a liberal, the Dave Rubin routine, right? And it largely, like, it works very much in the same way. So I think it's funny when I see this stuff now, when you being someone who is a member of the atheist community, and you watch all the apologists and all the time, and you got a certain subset of apologists that are always like, I was an atheist at one time here, but then I'm not right now, and stuff, all those other things, and basically talks like, no atheists had ever talked, like when they were out of it and what they think of this stuff. There, it sounds very much like a Christian talking about what they think atheists believe. It's, oh, I held those beliefs and all that other stuff. It's very similar to what Tim Pool does, and I say he's a conservative bone thought. I mean, we have election records where he gave max donations to several Republican candidates over the years, right? So, he gives nothing to the Democrats. He doesn't. There's no Democrat he really supports anywhere on anything, right? So he's a Republican. He's a conservative. Like, I don't know if I would say, like, effectively, like, if we're just looking at there, effectively, Tim Pool's a white nationalist, right? Like, so his earlier in his coverage there, they're talking about Trump not condemning white supremacists and stuff, and then he gives the old, well, oh, the so-and-so is a mixed race, so they can't be a white supremacist, right? So it's like, I have a black friend thing for these people, for like the Proud Boys and stuff. And it's like, that's not how it works, my dude, right? There are we talked about like Blair White. Blair White's clearly transphobic, especially towards non-binary people, right? And to those that aren't traditional binary passing trans people as well, right? She's notorious for it. So she's definitely transphobic in that area. And a lot of the defense of Blair's opinions, well, she's trans, so she can't be transphobic. It's like, historically, there was Jewish Nazis, right? We know that. There were honorary Aryans to be kept around. What am I grifting, though? Like, what am I saying that's grifting? I'm giving you my opinions honestly, and they're not the same here, right? I can talk about certain left things. So earlier in the chat, what was it? Our Crockett 22 was coming talking by. We had a disagreement over anarchism and liberalism and kind of talks like this and different theories and stuff like that. So I'm being honest with it. Like, if I really wanted to grift on this sphere, I'd do what like Mike from PA is and just echo all that other stuff. But I'm point blank with what I believe, where I hold my beliefs, what they are. I'm honest about them. I am super honest about my anti-SJW Chud pass. I'll talk about that. I'll talk about the things that move there. So, like, what am I grifting? I'm not lying about my beliefs to people to spend it here. Whereas, like, Tim Pool, there was some what do I want to say, independent research by someone on the Twitter account that went through, I think, 100 videos of his or whatever, and found, or several hundred videos of his, something like that, and basically took the percentage of what articles he was citing, and overwhelmingly they were right-wing to far right-wing articles, right? So Breitbart and everything like that. And so this is the center-left Democrat, right? That label he tries to hold. Yeah. I can say that about, though, Tim Pool. Like, we can see it. Like, Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin will say whatever for the money, right? That's been clear. I followed Dave Rubin's evolution, right? I was in Atheism is Unstoppable's group as part of the atheist thing when I moved from the atheist and skeptic sphere moved from atheism to the anti-SJW stuff. So I got caught up in following that stuff. And one of the things that AIU says, AIU hates the Young Turks. He said, but I like this one Young Turk, this Dave Rubin. And then I followed him when Dave Rubin gave the Rubin report in the beginning. I followed through there. And over time, it just becomes like, yeah, dude, you're going to say whatever you want to say for the money, or whatever's going to get you the biggest paycheck. Right? Like, that's what grifting is. Like, I can do Jeremy's job better than Jeremy can do if I really wanted the money and do that stuff. And it's like, I can't lie. I don't want to sacrifice the principles that I have at my core to do that stuff, right? That's a large reason why I never got involved in like law. I never got involved in politics, right? From a very young age, I'm like, these are things that are going to ask me to compromise somewhere along the way my principles, and I do not want to do that. Right now, eventually, I might do that. Depending on where the country goes and stuff. There, at my age, I might get involved in politics as like running as a candidate and stuff at some point under my real identity. And that's largely just because the options aren't there to get there and push what I want. But if I do it, I'm not going to give up on, the principles and stuff that I have, which means I'm probably not going to get very far. No, I mean, we watched him lie plenty on this stuff here, right? Like, we called it out in this last video, but we'll go on.
Thing. Like, when you're talking over him, cut the mic. I mean, it would be a pretty easy way to deal with it. Anyway, the performance kept the focus squarely on Mr. Trump, often where he seemed to like it, but also where Biden campaign wants all the attention in the 2020 election. The Democrats has cast a referendum on the current president. Trump still wants to wear the outsider mantle. Mr. Trump is the president. He held his convention speech in the White House grounds, but he found some of his great success 4 years ago when running against Hillary as a failed Washington insider, and he's not giving up that angle in 2020. Why would he? Trump would not condemn white supremacy or urge his supporters to stay calm. Ridiculous. He's already denounced it a million times. He has his platinum plan for black people. He has disavowed. I mean, as of course, only a moron doesn't. Only a moron would believe that.
I mean, he hasn't disavowed it, and just because. So I love that this here. I love the logic or whatever that goes behind it. It's like, oh well, he put this plan forward for black people. Therefore, what, he condemns white supremacy when he does that? Like, that's not a policy that condemns white supremacy, right? Like, policies that can support blacks in certain areas, African Americans in certain areas, can work just fine in a larger white supremacist agenda, right? It's not, those things aren't mutually exclusive. That's where he put us. But yeah, he didn't condemn them.
Trump did little to address the gender gap. Gender gap doesn't exist. Biden rebuffed the leftist label. Well, yeah, I think that Trump was clearly trying to.
So yeah, the gender gap does exist, right? There is some gender gap in there. Like, the simple answers to, the long-standing anti-SJW mantra is when you just look at the 76% or 76 cents on the dollar thing. It's like, no, when you adjust for that stuff, there's stuff here. But then the next question beyond that, basic talking point, which can be easily debunked, is to go on, well, why are certain fields pushed towards women into compared to others? Why are, how that stuff, and you look in that stuff and you see some other gender gap stuff. Yeah, there is. There's still some there and stuff like this. So, but when you control for some, it's maybe 4 or 6% that's unaccounted for. But the bigger question is, why are these certain fields open to women, or not open to, or not as full of women, all that stuff? So there's simple answers. Well, oh, it's just choice, and all this is just choice. And so, sure, some choices in there, but there's also some things with how pay in certain fields has changed over time, as they become more dominated by women compared to men, or vice versa, right? Programming and stuff, which everybody talks about. Oh, just go into programming, do all this other stuff that goes there. Was at one point predominantly done by women. It was also during that time was looked down upon, and so it was kind of one of those lower paying stuff. And then when men started taking over programming, the pay got higher, right? Yep. Yeah, there's plenty of those other stuff too. Yeah, there's other factors, but in the basic talking point, the basic thing they can throw about is when you adjust for, or when you take into account different variables, which is what you should do when doing statistics. But yeah, but even in that stuff, there's other things that we can find. Largely, one of the ones they like to put on as just choices when women have children, but when men have children, their pay seems to increase. Whereas women have children, they lose out. They got to take the time off, usually without pay because there's no maternity leave, right? And those are all things that contribute to the wage gap, the gender gap, and all that other stuff.
push Biden as a socialist. He talked a lot about socialism and all sorts of things like that. Mr. Biden repeatedly took opportunities on Tuesday to distance himself from the party's left wing without denouncing them. And he left little doubt who was in charge. The party is me right now, Mr. Biden. I said, I am the Democratic Party. He said an eventual stance on adding seats to the Supreme Court, on which he avoided taking a position, would become the party line, and he rejected the Green New Deal without looking down on expansive environmentalism, even though his website says he supports it. I support the Biden plan. Mr. Biden's delivery was not always forceful. He did occasionally lose his cool and succumb to Mr. Trump's barrage of taunts.
I apologize for the rain in the background. Nothing I could do about it.
But he mostly emerged unscathed, and for Democrats, anything but a loss was welcomed as a clear win. Imagine that. Imagine that that's your candidate. Well, at least he didn't lose too badly. So
is he going to look up at the polls at all? Right? Like, some punditry that says, oh, he didn't lose too badly or any of that other stuff, or so there. Like I said, ultimately it doesn't matter because presidential debates don't really move the needle. Maybe this will be the exception.
Media will declare, Biden won in a landslide. When you watched his demeanor, every time he would get owned, he would just smile. That's not exactly what I want. Ultimately, we know how the media is going to say. Fact check: Trump claims Biden called African Americans super predators. I mean, I think that was Hillary Clinton. I think, right?
Yeah, that was Clinton. That wasn't Biden, right? So he tried to run with a Clinton line.
Biden campaign expresses intent to participate in final two debates despite chaos. Well, I'd like to see a little better job. I mean, Fox, this is your guy supposedly, and he did exactly what I said he would. He slithered away. He spent most of his time, I think, focused on Trump. And, ultimately, we learned very little that we didn't already know. We know Joe Biden is weak.
Well, so Wallace had to focus on Trump because Trump was being a brat up on stage. Like, no questions asked. Hey, come on. Cool it down in the chat there, Marty.
We know that Trump is overzealous and impetuous. We already knew that going into the debate. If I had to score this debate like it was a UFC fight, I'd probably say 55-45 Trump, 60-40, maybe. I don't think it was a good look for him. I think he just thought he would steamroll him, which he did do, but at the same time, he did little, and he had some gaffes. Trump had some gaffes where he, made some claims that were false.
We're about a minute left in the video, and he hasn't shown one single media declare Biden win in a landslide. Like, this is the type of... So when we talk about the grifting stuff and the lying and the stuff here with Jeremy. Now, Jeremy being a conservative, I don't doubt that he's not lying on that stuff. He's being honest about being a conservative person, right? I think that's honest in there, right? Where it comes specifically in Jeremy's case on the grifting, it comes more on his pop culture stuff, right? Where I don't think he gives two shits about, but he saw 3 years ago he could make a lot of money doing it, and largely because he got banned from Magic the Gathering after harassing a cosplayer out of the community. But yeah,
pretty disappointing overall. I would say that Trump isn't exactly the best debater anyway. I wouldn't put him in, the top 20 probably that I've seen on these presidential debates or even the Democratic and Republican national debates. He did just enough, but he's going to need to improve in his second and third debate. Right now, I think Trump's really counting on being able to talk about having a vaccine before the election. I think that's a big W for him.
He doesn't have a vaccine, though, right? That hasn't happened yet. So how's that a W? It's just him claiming shit. Just like he claimed that he was going to have a brand new health plan out within 2 weeks when he was interviewed by Chris Wallace, and we've gotten jack shit of a healthcare plan. We've gotten jack shit of a healthcare plan from him for 4 years now.
But who knows if that's going to happen. November 3rd is right around the bend. I'll be interested to see what you have to say about the debate in the comment section down below. I scored a Trump win, but only minor. And I think he would have done better to let Joe Biden talk more, because the more Joe Biden talks, the more crazy things he says. And he's got to back off a little bit. That's my opinion, but I'll be interested to hear what all of yours are in the comment section down below.
So he didn't even cover the main thesis of this. Declares Biden to win in a landslide. So that was just all clickbait. Fuck. He's one of the last ones I grabbed. Ugh, are we ready for Dave Rubin? Are we ready for Dave Rubin? Are we ready?
To decipher leading to...
So. Let's see. He streamed this earlier today, so. That's loud. Get better on your mix there, Dave. Yeah.
Hello, you racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, bigoted Islamophobes. How are you, people?
Clap, everybody. The comedian has arrived.
I'm Dave Rubin. This is the Rubin Report direct message. And in case you didn't hear about it, there was a presidential debate last.
Just speed him up a little bit, because fucking hell, if he's going to do this. Let's go 125 first and see how he's. Hopefully, that's not too like a chipmunk.
And this thing was pretty much a disaster on all fronts. If anyone that you watch on YouTube or on mainstream media, or someone that you might listen to their podcast, or your neighbor or your mother or anyone else tells you that they gleaned anything out of that thing that made them feel better about the future of the country, or made them feel that that this is the right format for getting forth ideas that are going to help lead us into the next decade and to the next century, that person is an idiot. So we're going to be deciphering some of the craziest.
Oh no, I got a lot out of it, right? That Trump needs to get the fuck out of office, right? But I knew that beforehand going in, but no. That and the conservatives had to cope so much on fucking Twitter, on the internet, and come up with a new conspiracy that, you know, they had a conspiracy beforehand, but oh no, they found Biden with a wire, so everybody's feeding him answers and stuff like that. That's the only way. So even the conservatives, like the ones that are actually following this along, that actually, you know, feel it in here, instead of people like Sargon, Tim, the Quartering, Dave Rubin here, they're like, shit, he was good. Shit, he was too good. Oh, we're bad. You know, so at least there's some of those on there. We got to find out some reasons, because they're like, oh, he cheated. Look at this. You know, there's the Lavelle Mike wire or whatever that was in his jacket that showed up on street. See, oh, he's wired. He's cheating something. It's like, no, he's got a little Lavelle Mike on, right? That's all it is.
Stuff.
What, you think Dave was making fun of me? Like, there's nothing there. I've never said anything. Dave Rubin has no political ideology. He is literally, you know, the token for hire.
That happened from last night. I did do a post-debate show last night, which was viewed already over 500,000 times. It's got over 500,000 views on YouTube, so I am glad to see.
Yeah, Joe Rogan still makes fun of Dave Rubin to this day over that interview.
That people are starting to wake up, or there has been a mass awakening. People are tuning out of mainstream media, as you should. It is almost all complete nonsense. I am a guy in my office with my one producer right there. My dog is the executive producer, Clyde. He's outside right now, and a director who's working.
So
and I'm just telling.
The only mainstream media I would argue you should stay out of is Fox News, largely, right? They're the mainstream media, right? They like to pretend they're not. I don't particularly like MSNBC for that. Their CNN is probably where you're going to get the most neutral reporting on things, but largely, yeah, Fox News could go. That'd be the only mainstream media. But if your choice is, oh, we're gonna leave the mainstream media, we're gonna go to people like Dave Rubin, don't. Like, we're fucked as a country if it becomes Dave Rubin. Even the Young Turks, like, if we're gonna pick, like, be fair and pick on the left side there, you know, we're fucked with either of those as like the new mainstream, as the alternative to the typical mainstream. Yeah. So what do you mean, Rogan, good or bad for this? What are you talking about? Like, you know, not everybody sees everybody as, good, bad, this thing across the board, right? Like as some enemy over there, right? I think Joe Rogan is kind of largely an apolitical jock type guy, right? And he's getting into conversations largely he shouldn't get involved in, and in several cases he says and does a lot of really stupid, or in the case of trans people, very transphobic shit consistently, right? He gets a bit into conspiracy theories and stuff there. But on the other side, he can also dunk on some of these guys here that do it, like Dave Rubin on his show with the use Yelp reviews instead of regulations on building. And Joe Rogan, who worked in construction, is like, yeah, that's not how that's going to work. That's you can't do it that way. That's stupid, right? I can look at that and say, yeah, hey, Joe Rogan called him on this and did this well. Or when Joe Rogan ran over Steven Crowder over like marijuana, and Steven Crowder got all upset about it. You can have a nuanced view about things and about people, right? Yeah, that's about it. And he's not prepared for a lot of these conversations, but at least he'll push back. Yeah. I haven't watched much of his comedy. I remember when I heard he was doing comedy, 15 years ago, or so, whenever he started really doing it, or when we became aware of it. Because before that, it was just Joe Rogan was the Fear Factor guy. Or was he doing MMA before he started doing that there? Maybe he did comedy before that. I haven't followed his career as much, but I remember when I started seeing it, and it was like 15 years ago, I wasn't impressed, and maybe now it's better.
And I think that you're probably going to feel a little better about the world, or at least you'll have a little sense about what just happened. I mean, good God, that was insane last night. And then I would say the only
thing going on. Let me refresh this. Get good audio, and the video is all choppy.
To decipher, leading to hilarious but puzzlement and laughter. But puzzlement, that's a word. Simply put, it's a classic word. The direct message is because they're fans of the show. So this is one way we can fight cancel culture, right? It's like if you've got an interesting product or service or whatever it might be, if you help support some of the shows that are getting the ideas you care about, then you've done a little something. So show them some love, and it really is fun. Okay, let's get to the debate. It was a debacle. The entire thing was a debacle. Even something's a debacle when even the partisans on both sides were like, that was rough. Now, for the most part, the real Trump people are saying Trump mopped up, and the real Biden people are saying Biden mopped up. But as I was saying last night, what you really want to figure out after a debate is, did any of the undecided people, however many of them actually exist, and not only how many undecided people, but the undecided people who are actually going to vote. Because if you're undecided at this point, that means you're probably pretty apolitical, so that you may be less inclined to vote. But so how many of those people are then going to be moved? Now, it's hard, I think, to have said you watched that debate, you didn't know who you were going to vote for, and suddenly you were like, that guy, whoever it was, made a lot of sense, and I'm definitely voting for them. So, when you hear a lot of the post-game debate, it's this one won, like, that's not really what the question is. Like, someone obviously can win a debate, but what does that actually translate to in the real world? Okay, so I want to throw to a couple clips. And this is the first one is the most important one, because this seems to be what the media narrative is, that Trump did not condemn white supremacy. So we're going to do two things here. And I cannot believe that.
I mean, he didn't. That's we've been saying this over and over. This is kind of the conservative talking point going over and over again, trying to bail Trump out.
I have to do journalism. I'm not a journalist. I'm just
yeah. If I cancel culture by giving me money, yeah, Dave is a genius. Yeah,
some guy. But we're gonna do two things here. We're gonna play the exact clip, and then I'm gonna actually show you the text, because there was a lot of crosstalk and it was a little hard to decipher exactly what was going on. So we're gonna play the clip and I'm gonna show you the text. I'll read it back to you slowly, so you can decide for yourself, what did Trump do? Did he not condemn white supremacy? Did he condemn white supremacy? What the high hell happened? So here is the white supremacy question from last night's debate.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland.
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared
to
to
do
specifically
that,
do it? Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see
Well,
peace.
then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name. Go ahead.
supremacists and
Who would
white
you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing. This is a left-wing problem.
Okay, so it's a little messy, particularly at the end of the clip. But now I want to.
I mean, that's pretty pretty concrete that he didn't condemn, the white supremacy, right-wing militias and stuff like that, right? Always trying to turn it away from those groups to, oh, well, this is the evil left's fault. This is the evil left's fault. Playing defense on that side.
Throw up the actual text of what was said, and I'm just going to reread it for you. And I think if you actually see it, and if I kind of reread it without the crosstalk, I think it might kind of help. So, Wallace, are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups? Trump, sure. Okay, so that kind of sounds like he might have condemned white supremacist groups. Wallace, and to...
Nope. The question is, will you be willing to do it tonight? He said sure, but then he never does it. Right?
Say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland. Trump, sure, I'm prepared to do it, but I would say almost everything I see is from left wing, not from the right wing. I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace. Wallace, then do it, sir. Biden, do it. Say it. Trump, what do you want to call them? Give me a name. Wallace, white supremacists and right-wing militias. Biden, Proud Boys. Trump, Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what, somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left. Okay, so this clip obviously is the one where everybody's saying Trump refused to condemn the white supremacists. Now, first, let me just say this. Trump's mistake here was because he actually is a student of the media. If Trump's a student of anything, it's of the media.
Oh, God. Oh, the cringe. The Dave Rubin's coming. Yeah. And it is what it is, right? Like, this is kind of the thing about these audience. They can tell you whatever they want. They're going to come back and tell you that that's not what they said. But, the cringe. We're getting into the 4D chess here. The 4D chess, like, or even beyond that now, or, 56-dimensional chess at this point.
Yeah. So if Trump wanted to just save himself a headache, and I know hindsight is 20/20, and when you're on the fly and there's a lot of crosstalk, it can be difficult to do. Trump almost needed to just repeat the question. Like, if you remember in 5th grade, you get a test and they would ask you a question, they'd say, repeat the question and then give the answer. Trump almost needed to say, will I condemn the white supremacists? I will condemn the white supremacists. This is me, Donald J. Trump, right now condemning all the white supremacists. Now, I'm not saying that would have solved all of this, because nothing ever solves all this, and we've so degraded the word racist.
That would have solved it. You wouldn't have had this problem, right? Right? And one of the long-standing criticisms of Trump is his support and playing defense for white supremacists, right? So had he come out and just said, yes, I condemn this. I condemn white supremacists, right-wing militias. They need to stand back, let the police do their job. All that stuff. Don't get involved in it, right? He said all that would have come off looking great, right? But he can't say that. He's not going to denigrate his base. But now it's just like, oh, we diluted the word of racism. Now we get Dave Rubin's analytics.
That once you throw it on somebody, it's
analysis.
just become meaningless. So half the time when they call someone a racist, I'm like, oh, that person obviously isn't a racist. And Biden, by the way, did call him a flat-out racist in the midst of it. We'll get to that in a little bit on the critical race theory stuff. So look, did Biden condemn the white supremacists? The first thing he said was, sure. So he did.
No.
Now, he did not say the exact sentence. And then at the end, so I think what everyone's getting hung up on is this Proud Boys thing, because Chris Wallace who I don't envy his position as an interviewer and a moderator. I don't really envy it. I would gladly do the job. I really would. And
Yeah, it's really concerning, right? Um, what's the guy's name? Steve King is also pretty out and out white supremacist here, right? Is that who I'm thinking of from Iowa or where's he from? But he said that stuff point blank as a long-standing Republican Party member, right? And been a part of it. It is really concerning that it's put this way, right? But then again, this is this is the whole idea of the Southern strategy and the flip and the push there to appeal to the large racist base and stuff like that, right? So this is just a kind of a conclusion to their previous plans and strategies to get in power, right? And now it's out in the open more clearly, right? So it's not, you're not calling dog whistles and, they're gaslighting you to make you seem like you're crazy for picking up on this stuff. It's like, nope, we're just going to go run through this and we're going to be blatant about not standing up to these kind of things. So we'll see what happens here going forward.
I would try the best I could to be impartial and everything else. But there was such chaos and crosstalk. And this actually wasn't even one of the moments that really got out of hand. But Chris Wallace in the question never asked anything about the Proud Boys. I don't even feel like I need to talk about the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys aren't the ones burning down the cities. These are Antifa and BLM associated groups that are burning down the cities. We all know this. We've all seen a zillion of the videos. And no matter what Joe Biden says, Antifa is not just an idea. And an idea doesn't burn down a city. People burn down cities. People burn down buildings. People stop traffic and don't let people pass. People punch people and assault people at restaurants and a bunch of other stuff, not just an idea. So if we had an honest...
So the Proud Boys matter because they're one of those right-wing militias, right? Even if for a second you don't think they're white supremacists, right? Even if you know they're there. Part of the question was beyond just the white supremacists, but the right-wing militias as well. So even if you threw that out, that's a group, right? So what Trump was asking for was a name, a certain thing to call out and say and condemn, right? And then when given the Proud Boys, he didn't condemn them. Why? Because the Proud Boys are big supporters of him, right? He's not going to condemn those that support him on that realm. But then too, the Antifa is an idea, not an organization. That was Biden quoting Trump's FBI director, who said the same thing in a hearing, right, on the situation. Right, and they're losing all their minds, like, oh, these are all Antifa organizations, stuff like that. And it's like, no, white supremacy is an idea too, right? That's a. But asking to condemn white supremacy, condemning anti-fascism, Antifa, and stuff like that as ideas, those are different. But if you want to condemn like the white supremacists, those that live, act, and behave on that stuff, condemn on that part here, right? When talking about Antifa, you're talking about, being anti-fascist. Yep. Yeah, Reagan is basically the genesis of Trump, right? And was only really kept in check, which is what bugs me when lefties say that Reagan was to the left of Biden, right? It's just a silly thing to say, right? And when they want to denigrate here, largely, that had to do. The Democrats had both houses of Congress. Yeah, there is some level. There are groups and stuff like that, but two, like I said, Biden was just quoting the FBI director in that exchange, right? When talking about it, right? You could hear him say when Trump, in the clip he showed, when Trump was talking about Antifa and all that other stuff, you could see Biden start the idea, not an organization, that his FBI director said, right? You can see him start that line in that position.
An honest media would be doing two things right now. They'd be honestly looking at what Trump's response was. Do you condemn white supremacy? The first thing he said was, sure. Then
No, it said, would you be willing to do that tonight? And he said, sure. And then when asked to do it, he didn't do it, right? Those are two different questions, Dave.
Then it devolved into this thing where it got caught up in, well, what do you want me to call it? And then I think when Biden said Proud Boys, Trump's mistake was addressing that instead of just saying, He should have just flat out said, I condemn white supremacists. That's it. He should have said, I've done it before. I did it after Charlottesville. We'll get to that clip in a second. I've done it before, and I'll do it again. So look, of course, the media is running with this thing because it fits their narrative perfectly. And I think the Proud Boys thing really confused it. And I also think that Trump's line, stand back and stand by, I just don't even know what he meant there. Was he really telling Proud Boys? I'm not even totally sure what Proud Boys is, but like, was he really telling?
Oh, that lie. I'm not really sure what the Proud Boys is. Like, that lie. Like, has Dave Rubin not had Gavin McInnes on his channel before? Let's look that up. Dave Rubin, Gavin McInnes. Oh, it fills it in. Predictive test. It didn't pop up right away. So let's go to the Rubin report and see if I don't see one on there. So maybe he did. I swore he did. Maybe he did it at a different event or in a different channel than his Rubin report. I swear he's talked to Gavin McInnes before. Maybe on Gavin McInnes' show.
Telling this group, we will stand back and stand by, like, meaning you'll have to do something at some point. Like, he's more than happy to use the government, to use the feds, to use the National Guard if necessary. I don't think Trump needs a group, the Proud Boys or any other group, to do his dirty work. It's just not like that. That's actually quite different than what's happening on the left, where Biden really is refusing to condemn Antifa. Antifa is the one actually causing violence right now, and he won't even say that they're an organization, and we know that they're obviously an organization. So oddly, I think
but Biden has consistently condemned the violence, right? So if you want to play that mainstream media is running with the idea that Trump won't condemn this kind of stuff and they're just wrong and they're playing into this, you can't turn around and run your narrative that Biden's not condemning the violence and the property damage and all that other stuff. Yeah. Well, as a group as a whole, like, obviously there's different local organizations that organize certain ways and stuff like that you could point to. But in general, Antifa being anti-fascist or anti-fascism as a position is, and like, this is Trump's FBI director said the same exact thing as Biden. So Biden's not saying anything different than what already being said by the Trump administration, outside of, Trump and his talk.
This morning, all the clips were about, is Trump a racist? I think the Biden team and the messaging and the media.
Well, I mean, Trump is a racist. We know his history with denying black people entrance into his hotels and properties and stuff like that. So much so that there was a legal battle over it, if I remember correctly. Someone in chat can.
Media, because they can't control themselves. They sort of overshot the target here, and they went in so deep on this that now it's going to start coming out that, wait a minute, Antifa is just an idea, and Trump actually did, if you watch the clip, condemn the white supremacy stuff, even if he did it in a slightly butchered way. I mean, the guy speaks in a stilted manner. It's just how it is. But I want to show another clip, because Joe Biden said at a different point during this that the entire reason he got into the race, because remember, he didn't get in 4 years ago, right? He was the VP at the time. He could have got in. That would have generally been the time to get in, right? That's what Al Gore did after Bill Clinton. That's what George H.W. Bush did after Ronald Reagan, et cetera. That would have been the time. But he said he didn't get in then. He did get in this time because of Trump and Charlottesville and white supremacy.
Oh, yeah, all the Central Park 5 stuff? Ooh, yeah.
That was the whole point of his campaign. And by the way, when Biden launched his campaign, that's exactly what he said, that it was because of the white supremacist stuff that happened after Charlottesville. So now I'm going to show you a video that the mainstream, I am not a freaking journalist, but I'm going to show you a video that mainstream media refuses to show. And you tell me if Trump condemned the white supremacists at Charlottesville or not. Let's throw to the clip.
And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? and the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group too.
The press is treated unfairly, sir. I'm sorry, I just didn't understand what you were saying. You were saying the press has treated white nationalists unfairly?
No.
I just didn't understand what you were saying.
No. There were people in that rally, and I looked the night before. If you look, there were people protesting very quietly the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee. I'm sure in that group there were some bad ones. The following day, it looked like they had some rough, bad people. Neo-Nazis, white nationalists, whatever you want to call them. But you had a lot of people in that group that were there to innocently protest and very legally protest because, you know, I don't know if you know, they had a permit. The other group didn't have a permit. So I only tell you this. There are two sides to a story. I thought what took place was a horrible moment for our country, a horrible moment. But there are two sides to the country.
Okay, I really, really hope that you've seen that clip already. I hope that you've seen that and that you will share that clip or you'll send this very video to people that are completely confused by this, who still believe that Donald Trump said there are good people on both sides. What he was referring to, he first said the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists.
Oh, he said the white nationalists, right? So neo-Nazis and white nationalists are part of white supremacists, right? Largely if you're going to keep up like a statue of Robert E. Lee, right? Which is what they're protesting over. A general of the Confederate Army that broke away from the U.S. over whether or not they could own black people, right? And say, hey, maybe we should take that down. Maybe we shouldn't honor that way, right? The people that want to honor it and kind of play sideways on that stuff here could still favor white supremacy in that sense, right? So that wasn't a condemnation of white supremacy on the whole, right?
Should be condemned totally. He later, after the question, said that they are bad people. What he was talking about when he said both sides is that there are people on both sides of the debate as to what you would do about a Robert E. Lee statue, and that some of the protesters actually had permits to be there. And by the way, you may not like people who want Robert E. Lee statues to be up there, but they're allowed to protest for it the same way you're allowed to protest against it. So why will they not show that clip on CNN? Jake Tapper, you're the last guy there with a flickering sense of decency, as far as I can tell. Show the clip. Show the clip. Why am I doing your job? Brian Stelter, Wolf Blitzer, any of you people, Lemon, just show that clip and let people decide whether Trump was for the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists, which he said he condemns totally.
Because they're the white nationalists, right? You can be a white supremacist and not want a white ethno-state, right? Like, those things don't have to be, aren't the same thing.
Now, the reason that this is important, this isn't me carrying water for Trump. This is that the media refuses to tell you the truth. And if the media is going to keep refusing to tell you the truth, well, you're going to keep tuning out of that and tuning into things like this. But then that becomes even more dangerous because we're all going to keep going to our silos. And as I've been saying for a while, we basically have a war on reality right now because people just pick what they believe is true based on preconceived notions. And at some level, you can't blame them because the media is just so incredibly crappy. On top of everything else, then the Biden team from the official @Joe Biden Twitter account, they tweeted out this thing today about Trump refusing to condemn white supremacy. And they put a picture of Kyle Rittenhouse, who is the kid in Kenosha. We did a video on him last week. And there, as far as I know, there is no evidence that this kid, whether he did the right thing or wrong thing, let the people decide. And I'm happy to discuss that further. And it seems like it's much more complex than the media was originally allowing. But as far as I know, there is no evidence that this kid is a white supremacist. Okay, so I think Biden may have really, really stepped in it on that one. And it sounds like this kid has a pretty good legal team, and he should definitely be looking into a defamation lawsuit or something else like that. But
isn't Rittenhouse's lawyer a QAnon conspiracist? If I remember that correctly. Oh, it looks like they are going to sue, right? Sue Joe Biden for libel. It just came out a couple hours ago.
Let people say these phrases. You're a racist. You're a white supremacist, as if it has no meaning, and they're just absolutely destroying lives. So, again, I hope you share this clip. If that was news to you, or if it's news to somebody that you know, and we all have these people in our families and our friends, it's important for context. It's just important for context. So Trump said sure last night. Did he butcher it by not saying a full sentence? I absolutely condemn white supremacy. Yeah. Rob Smith, by the way, who's been on the show a couple times, he set out a nice little Twitter thread of the series of times that Trump has condemned racism and anti-Semitism and the rest of it. And it's like, the media, stop thinking that CNN is a news organization. Stop thinking that MSNBC is a news organization. If you stop thinking that, you can see you can see reality a lot clearer. And this is what the red pill is, right? When people say, well, you took the red pill, you swallowed the red pill, this is what it is. When you see reality as it is, not as the media is force-feeding it.
God, they're still going to belabor that meme.
To be. All right, I want to go to clip number 3. They started talking about socialism. That is a hot button issue these days, and let's take it away.
Your party wants to go socialist medicine.
My party is
and
me.
Socialist
right
healthcare.
Now, I am
and
the
they're going to
Democratic
dominate
Party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the
Not according
Democratic
to
Party
Harris.
is what I, in fact, approved of.
I am the Democratic Party right now. All right, my Star Wars people, what does that remind you of? Remember Palpatine? Remember Revenge of the Sith, which I think is the most underrated of all Star Wars movies? I think you can make a solid argument that it's the third best after Empire Strikes Back and A New Hope. I think you could put Sith as number 3. What did Emperor Palpatine say when Mace Windu and the other 3 Jedi showed up to arrest him when they found out that he was the
So what is his point over this quote? Like,
Sith? I am the Senate. That's what he said. And Joe Biden, I am the Democratic Party. And that little sleight of hand that he's doing there, it's an interesting move because I am the Democratic Party. Well, the Democratic Party seems to me, the future of the Democratic Party seems to be AOC. It seems to be Ilhan Omar. It seems to be Rashida Tlaib, these really radical leftists. Now, if Joe Biden, you are the future, are the Democratic Party, then why are you so afraid of speaking out against these people? And the simple truth is he knows that he's basically the last vestige of some sort of moderate Democrat. And he can't really stop this thing. He can't stop this thing. Even last night, he came out, he said, I'm not for the Green New Deal. I've got my own deal. On his own website, it says he's for the Green New Deal. But he knows he knows the Green New Deal is nonsense and it's an entire rejiggering of our economy and it's insanely expensive and cow farts and all of this nonsense. He knows that, but he can't turn against the bad guys. He has a deal with the devil in place because the deal with the devil is Bernie and the socialists. Bernie and the socialists. It would be a good name for a doo-wop group in the 50s.
yeah, slating movies make political points, yeah. Well, it's almost bad. I have it. I probably should clip it up and do it from a few weeks ago. Mr. Obvious video when the Trump comments came out, and basically the conspiracy around that is that this guy just took the lines from The Godfather Part 2 or Part 3. Thanks for the follow, Dog Barks. And pushed that as the conspiracy that he just took those lines from the Godfather film and put them in there. Now is there a way to defend that it was fake?
Bernie and the socialists basically, I think, in effect, have said, you want our support? Well, then you're going to have to do all these things. And Biden, look, usually what happens in a primary is that in either side of a primary, right? When you're on the Republican side, you have to move more. I'll do it this way. When you're on the Republican side, you have to move more to the right, during the primary process because you got to get the base going. And then usually what happens as a candidate is you moderate more to the center. And on the left, you go more to the left. And that's what happened this time, obviously. And then you moderate more to the center. So Biden is doing the move that they always do. The issue is he's not the Democratic Party. Like there's just no truth to it anymore. Where are the rest of the moderate voices? Please.
So Biden has always been a moderate Democrat, right? Not moderate in the sense that Dave Rubin is using it. Moderate is in the center of where the Democratic Party is, the consensus. 538 did a nice quick analysis over this and the voting record and looking at different things, and pretty consistently, Biden was in the middle of wherever the Democrats were, right, on stuff. And then all over his career. So as the Democratic Party moves, he's going to move with them, move against them and stuff. That's why with the growth of like the progressive wing of the party, this year's DNC platform, even Biden's platform, is far more progressive than what we've had in years. And we've continued to move and become more progressive in that sense toward those policy goals, right? But does not mean we're going socialist or anything like that. That's just not happening. But two, it's not making the deal with the devil, quote unquote, that we're going to run his policy. Like Bernie was just on after this thing on today on I think it was The View or whatever, talking about Trump saying, "Oh, you've in the debate to Biden that you want socialized medicine, you want all this other stuff, you want all this stuff." Then it's like, no, that's not true. And Bernie comes along and said, "I wish he would go on that stuff, but no, he's right. He doesn't want that stuff. He's not me. He doesn't want it. And, he wants a different path forward to healthcare, right?" Which, if we look at the polling, keeping private insurance, even though people don't like it, generally don't like all that other stuff here, the polling shows that if you get rid of private insurance right now, that's not a popular thing with the American electorate, right? So even when they say like Medicare for All is supported by a majority and all that other stuff, there's been analysis done that people who support Medicare for All also don't think, especially the framing, if we use Bernie's plan, they still think private insurance is going to be a thing. Like in that, instead of going on like Medicare for All, they can keep their employer plans and stuff like that, significant percentages. And so that'll hurt you because Bernie's plan, and largely it's not necessarily Bernie putting it in there. This is a piece of legislation that's existed, or rule that's existed in the what am I drawing? Like Medicare and stuff since the early 90s. So we're going on almost 30 years now. That you can't sell a comparable plan to Medicare. Now people try to say, "Oh, well, what about Medicare Advantage?" All that stuff. All those things are sanctioned through and partnered with Medicare. But like if you're just a private insurance company, you can't sell to seniors who have that thing and saying, "Do it also over here." And when ACA went into effect, there was a big push to remind people that were already on Medicare and Medicaid and stuff like that they did not need to go on and grab a plan off the exchanges, right? So there's a big campaign to remind people of that. And largely it's because of that rule, right? So any company that's put in there can get fined and all this other stuff, face legal consequence and stuff. But because Bernie's plan expands so much on Medicare beyond what Medicare currently does, it effectively eliminates private insurance as we know it, if it would go through. Now, I'm fine with that, right? And I'm fine with like the overgenerosity thing here, favor all that American exceptionalism, right? But the American electorate's not on that yet, quite yet. So maybe that's changed a bit with the pandemic, and we can look at more data, but I haven't seen any kind of analysis like we've had pre-pandemic on these plans. So right now, Biden's got the more popular plan, unfortunately. So he's not moving on that, and he didn't move on that, right?
Show me the list of moderate Democratic voices that believe in anything that goes against the big government socialist stuff. I mean, they just don't exist. So it's a little tricky.
So big government isn't socialism. That's a myth that people want to keep running with. It's not. Like the Republicans are just fine with big government in other areas. Welfare states have existed pre-capitalism, pre-socialism, and all that other stuff. So welfare states are not something that we have, that are antithetical to capitalism, right?
Trickery, basically, that Biden is doing there. I don't think, though, that Trump hit it hard enough. Trump's problem last night. I said this in my post-debate wrap-up. Trump's problem last night is he came out very hostile and aggressive. And 4 years ago, when he came out hostile and aggressive, he was this insurgent guy. It's like, I remember a tweet that I sent out going right before one of the debates, and remember that scene in Mad Max Fury Road when all the cars are on the road and there's the guy playing the guitar and there's flames coming out of it. And I used that gif, and I was like, that's Trump going to the debate. and it was kind of funny and whatever. I wasn't voting for Trump at that time, but there was like this insurgent, like sort of rock feeling to the whole thing or whatever. Trump coming out so angry and indignant last night, I think it doesn't work this time because now he's the president, right? So when you're the outsider and you're coming in, I'm going to drain the swamp, I'm going to do all this stuff. Well, then, okay, you can be kind of angry and indignant and memey and all of that stuff. When you're the president, I think he needed to come off as more presidential. That's not necessarily in a battle his strong suit. And I know a bunch of you are going to say, but he's also fighting the media. And I think that's totally legit. And I'm not the president, right? So I can give you the best analysis that I can, but I'm not the one up there having to fight that monster. But I think he's going to have to at least think about dialing some of it back. Because I think what Trump's plan was, basically was, I'm going to just attack the hell out of Biden right up front, knowing that Biden, when he gets flustered, starts losing his words and getting confused and everything else. And somehow it didn't happen to Biden last night, right? So for all of you...
So I actually agree with him on that. I think that was Trump's plan, right? Was, to put the pressure on Joe's stutter and stuff like that, and hopefully he loses his words and, loses control over that. But I think that's kind of a poor thing to think because Biden's been around in politics for a long, long time. Like, he can handle stressful situations. So that was certainly a miscalculation on Trump's part.
That have seen all the clips of Biden forgetting things and screwing up numbers and seemingly confused as to where he is and everything else. Well, I don't know if what they juiced him up with or what the hell happened, but he just slept. He's called 11 lids in September, meaning that basically at 10 a.m. he shuts down for the day. So maybe the guy just freaking slept and slept and slept and slept, and they gave him a couple brain supplements they got on Amazon, and they threw him out there. But
so this is just like, this is the cope. This is the full-bore copium that they're taking on this, is that Biden has looked good in debates and stuff. He's made some flubs and does some other things from time to time, but if you watch the entirety stuff, even the primary, right, like the debate with Bernie, one of the last ones there before Bernie dropped out, Biden was fine. Biden looked good. Biden was on top there. He flubbed some stuff there with his stutter, loses some train of thought and stuff going over certain things, but I mean, that's going to happen in the debates and stuff like that, and largely he looked good there. So, if you paid attention to that one, his performance here didn't look, wasn't going to be a surprise, but no, the conservatives weren't paying attention to that debate. The only thing they might have paid attention to was like, oh, here's a list of gaffes he did. So, that must have been the whole debate.
Although he lied a lot and he called Trump a racist and the worst president in U.S. history, and he
both of those are true.
He shut up, man, and he was rude and all of those things, and that seems more out of character for him than it would be for Trump, let's say. But the problem is that the bar was set so low, and I said this in my pre-debate coverage yesterday. The bar was set so low that all Biden had to do was not implode up there, and then he could be sort of framed as the winner. And he didn't implode. That's the thing. Did he lie? And will the media? Yes. Will the media call him out on it? Not really. But Trump is going to have to. Trump is going to have to basically rethink his strategy. That if you can't knock him out with that first punch, like if you think about it as a boxing match, right? It depends what your strategy is. Some guys want the long game. Some guys go for the kill. I think Trump is more of like a Mike Tyson. If you remember Mike Tyson boxing way back when, he went in just to maul and kill everybody in the first round, and he often did it. There's this incredible fight versus Michael Spinks that I'm sure some of you guys remember. He would scare the hell out of everybody, just beat the crap out of them, and that would be it. That was what I think his plan was. And then when it wasn't working, I think he got increasingly frustrated. And I think Chris Wallace, as I said before, in some ways Trump was debating 2-on-1, but it was also because he was so over the top in his...
I mean, to say that about the moderator trying to bring him back into control and follow the rules that he agreed to, that's not debating 2-on-1, right? So that's you carrying water for Trump again here, Dave.
In the jabs and the attacks that I think Wallace felt he had to be a little more on Biden's side or something like that. None of this is a perfect science. I want to jump in, and then I'm going to do a couple questions. We're going to go a little long today. When the question came up about critical race theory, which is obviously very big, but many people watching the debate are just hearing about it for the first time.
I would love to see Dave try to explain critical race theory, knowing that he can't do it at all.
This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else.
Radical,
and he would know.
What is radical totally about racial sensitivity training, sir?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas and, frankly, very sick ideas. And really, they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Okay, so those of you that watch.
So, yeah, you're going to claim he's not racist, and he's going to do that over racial sensitivity training. Right?
Watch this show, you know a bit about critical race theory. I just did a show that we released last week with.
No, if you've watched Dave Rubin's show, you know nothing about critical race theory.
Chris Rufo, who's one of the best scholars that we've got on this, dissecting what critical race theory is. I've talked to James Lindsay, who also is one of the great thinkers on this.
James Lindsay's an idiot. James Lindsay thinks Immanuel Kant was anti-enlightenment. That's in his book, right? In the critical of what was it called? Whatever his book is, a critical race theory. But James Lindsay literally claimed one of the prominent Enlightenment philosophers, the philosopher that gave the name the Enlightenment to that era, was an anti-Enlightenment project. Just think about that for a second. That's the level of quality that you get in understanding these philosophies and the counters to them.
And the disassemblers of what critical race theory is. But Chris Wallace was either really bad as a moderator right there, or was intentionally denying what the truth is. So Chris Wallace, if he's going to ask the question about getting critical race theory out, what he's doing there is he's conflating it with ending racial sensitivity training, right? The implication being that we should have racial sensitivity training so people aren't racist. Well, most of us agree with that. And by the way, we don't have any laws in the United States that encourage racism. We don't have racist laws on the books. Of course, there are individual racists. Critical race.
I mean, the war on drugs was something that was pushed hard by Nixon. We have the tapes to go after, to go after the hippies and the N-words, right? Like, point blank was to get those guys to target his enemies, right? There's a whole bunch of racial laws that were put on place that were struck down. So voter ID laws, right? Specifically, the one in was it North Carolina or South Carolina that the Supreme Court said was such an effective, precision, so precise in its attack against African American voters, right? When they struck it down, right? So no, he's wrong about this.
Race theory is injecting race into everything. So Trump did answer that properly. It's a hard question to have to kind of answer on the fly, but critical race theory is racist. If you want more quotas in government and with government contractors, and you want people to be hired because of their race and not because of their skill set and all of those things, then you should be for critical race theory. But you shouldn't be for critical race theory because it's antithetical to everything that the United States is all about. Okay?
Ooh. Can we get the accidentally left wing comment on that? Clip that for them? Right? Like, the white supremacy and stuff, and built into a lot of the system, the systemic racism. Of course, critical race theory would be against the the foundation of the U.S. or what the exact line was there, but that's that's a yes.
So Trump, I think his answer was fine, but Chris Wallace, do you not know what critical race theory is? Like, Chris Wallace, why didn't you explain for a moment that critical race theory is not about racial sensitivity training, meaning we should treat all people of all races equally. That's what we do. That's what we have laws that are passed and laws that are for equality, not equity. Equality, treat everyone equal. What happens to those people after? Well, it's up to them and hard work and a little bit of luck and everything else that is the gestalt of life, right? So that's what you need to be thinking about. And I think Chris Wallace, he either doesn't know it or intentionally conflated what it is. The implication being critical race theory will make people less racist. Why aren't you for it? Except it is making people more racist. It is injecting racism into the system. So it was a faulty question. And then Trump, went into his thing about that we should, instead of teaching 1619 Project, we should be teaching 1776 Project, the idea being, being proud of America. I think we could have a really interesting debate on whether we should be, what level of patriotism we should be encouraging, whether that should come from the federal government or state government, and how we teach history without completely destroying history. I mean, those are all interesting discussions to have.
Yeah, but it's a discussion you're not willing to have, right? When you tackle this stuff, right? Like trying to ignore or brush down or just highlight the good and ignore all the bad you've done means that you're never going to fix the bad things you've done and that are still going on, right? It's just, you're not going to do it, right? Just, kiss your ass that we're perfect, we're all this and all this other stuff, and ignore, the harms, the injustice, and all that other stuff that we've caused to people is not going to get anything done. So having an honest look at that stuff, having an honest breakdown here, but you oppose that stuff, right?
But I don't think we're going to get to too much more of that in the rest of these debates. Anyway, let me do a couple questions. I told you I'd do a couple questions, and I'm a man of my word, so I will do a couple questions. So these are questions submitted at RubinReport.com, and I have mentioned a couple times before, guys, Twitter has become such chaos, and the YouTube comment section is you people are not well, frankly. So if you want to communicate with me directly, RubinReport.com, we're growing a really great community. It's completely troll-free and bot-free and the rest of it, and you can submit.
Ooh, what about free speech, Dave? Huh? Where's the free speech for the trolls, my dude?
Some questions. Alexis says, Joe Biden appeared to be more cogent than usual. Do you think his calmer, more rational presence will gain him more voters and support? Well, that's what I referenced earlier, which is all he had to do was not implode to get a sort of default win. And I think he did accomplish that. He got very angry at times. He did the usual, you're a racist line, you're dumb, whatever, that kind of stuff. But he didn't lose himself. And I think that caused Trump to keep doubling down on the let me go after you, keep punching you thing. And I think Trump needed to think about some other methods to get to Biden. Will Trump or Biden change their strategies? This is from James. What strategies would you recommend for rounds 2 and 3? So I think Trump should try something. Look, it's hard to tell Trump what to do because Trump accomplished the thing by becoming president that nobody thought he could do. So a bunch of pundits and think tank people who've never accomplished anything in their lives, them all sitting up there saying, Trump must do this. Well, it's like, you never accomplished anything. The guy became freaking president of the United States. So he must have some insight into what he's doing. Whether you like him or not, I think you have to acknowledge that. So it's a little hard to tell Trump what to do. But my general take is that I think more people right now, even the most ardent Trump supporter, would like to see him on the debate stage, perhaps a little.
Yeah, I know. Well, Dave thinks it's a troll if you correct him or anything. It's not hard to get blocked by Dave Rubin. Which goes against everything he said about everything else, and then when he gloats about getting blocked by people.
A little more confident, a little more calm, not so quick to jump. He has a lot of things to be proud of related.
So you're asking Trump not to be Trump. That's Trump's biggest failing going forward.
To the economy, especially before COVID, and record low Black and Hispanic unemployment before COVID, and that Middle East peace thing, like that would be good. So I think there's a way to come off as a little more, I've done some good.
What Middle East peace thing? He's talking about that agreement with countries that weren't at war with each other, right? That wasn't Middle East peace or anything.
Stuff. His best line, Trump's best line was, I've done more in 47 months, that's roughly 4 years, than you've done in 47 years. That's a great line. Like Biden, the idea that Biden is going to fix any of the systemic racism or any of these things that apparently have been wrong with America for hundreds of years, he's been in government for 47 years. He's not going to fix any of these things. Obviously, that's where Trump, I think, can shine. As for Biden, what Biden needs to do more, I don't think there's that much he needs to do more. He needs to make sure he doesn't have a mental collapse on stage, and then the media will run cover for him so he can keep lying about very fine people on both sides, and the media will run cover. So if this is just about strategy of how you can win.
I love how it's the media pulling him and dragging all this other stuff here. This is Dave taking all the cope.
And Biden, keep resting. Just rest. That's about it. Let's see. I'll do two more quick ones here. I'm flipping real quick. Who split the most voters from the other side? Biden with his claim that Trump caused the COVID deaths and was all around the worst president ever, or Trump by forcing Biden to take a stand in the Democratic Civil War? So that was Trump's move for sure, was trying to pit every moderate position that Biden would take to say, oh, you're going to lose the left. And that's why Biden said the thing about I am the Democratic Party. I think that was a pretty sly move by Trump to really just get him to throw the base under the bus. I don't know that it fully hit, but Trump definitely should keep going on that.
I mean, the Democrats chose Biden, right? So you're not losing the base by going after him not being enough like Bernie Sanders, right? That's not going to take him down. That's not going to do anything there, right? This is just silly.
Biden claiming that all these deaths are because of Trump. I don't think that landed. Because Trump was calling for the China travel lockdown, and what happened? Oh, there's a beautiful fact check on CNN about this. You can't make this shit up. I tweeted it this morning. On the day that Trump called for the China travel ban, Biden called it xenophobic. CNN fact check that, whether Biden called Trump xenophobic. And their fact check basically said something like, it's inconclusive because even though he called him xenophobic that exact day, he didn't say in the sentence that it was directly related to the travel China ban. It's like, man, you guys aren't even trying to try anymore. Could you just try?
I love how he's going to say, well, Trump said sure when Wallace asked him, are you willing to condemn white supremacists and right-wing militias and put an end to their adding additional violence to things like in Kenosha and whatever. I love he's like, well, he said sure, so obviously he's against it. No, he said sure, he's obviously against it. But it's like, oh no, he mentioned xenophobia and something different, but wasn't explicitly referring to the China travel ban. Oh, you're lying about the cover. Of course he was saying it that way. Just love Dave's hypocrisy.
Try a little theater would be nice. A little theater would just be nice. So I don't know that either one got any major wins there. And I'll do one more back. Let's see. Dave, will you be moderator for one of these? I think the ship has sailed on that for this year, but I do think that watching these two guys, watching the format, it all feels old. It feels like this thing is just decaying and breaking down and the system ain't quite working right. And I do think that although it's not going to happen, whether it was me, heaven forbid, or it was Joe Rogan or anyone else, it's not going to happen this round. It's probably not going to happen for midterms. Like, people don't really care about debates during midterms like that. But I do think for the 4 years from now election, right, the 2024, when Trump runs for his third term because he won't step down, idiot. When that happens, I think it's going to be very, very different. I think the crop of candidates, we're going to have YouTubers and celebrities and some politics people and authors and influencers and all of that, for better or worse. And I think that the entire structure is going to have to modify. We're just, when you think about the chaos right now, it's because we're in a time when the institutions and the structures, they got calcified, and then your voice and YouTube and Twitter and real people and diverse thought, it came in, right? It's like this rush of pressure and water trying to burst through the ground, but the institutions are old and crumbled, and they're just trying to hold this thing that they can't quite hold, and it is collapsing. And I'm not someone that wants all the institutions to burn, because we need them to have a functional society.
All right, that was a weird finish. Trouble analogy. All right, what are we doing on time?